Chapter 1053. Murderous intent. Boom. A muffled thunderous explosion immediately resounded. Soon after, the large black seal and the blood spear that was wrapped in the sea of blood heavily collided. A dazzling light spread out. Zhuowen's crimson eyes deepened as the blood qi around him became denser. Demonic slaughter qi surged as the power of the blood spear reached its peak. Catcher. The big black seal shattered in an instant. Then, the blood spear fell from the sky and turned into a wisp of sharp blood light. It swept toward the Black Fist Elder with an unstoppable momentum. How is this possible? Elder Black Fist's face changed and his eyes were filled with disbelief. His black seal had been destroyed in an instant by an initial stage golden venerate martial artist. This was unbelievable. Die. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The blood spear was like a bloody mountain as it reached Elder Black Fist in an instant. Elder Black Fist screamed as he raised his skinny hands to block the blood spear. Terrifying Yuan force poured out of his hands and formed a Yuan force barrier to block the blood spear. Bang! The blood spear smashed heavily on the Yuan force barrier as a ring-shaped shockwave spread out. Terrifying energy filled the air as if the entire carefree square was shaking. No. The Black Fist Elder felt an irresistible force being transmitted from his hands. It was as though his hands were pressing down on a 100,000 feet tall mountain. Soon after, he was shocked to discover that cracks had actually begun to appear on the surface of the Yuan power barrier. Moreover, the cracks were getting bigger and bigger. Finally, it crumbled into pieces. The blood spear's aura was like a rainbow as it instantly penetrated the Black Fist Elder's body. Poochie. Elder Black Fist only had time to spit out the word no before his body was pierced by the blood spear and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Kill. After killing Elder Black Fist, Zhuowen did not slow down as he charged towards Elder Blue Ocean, who was still attacking Gatha and Xian Xing. The surface of the blood spear was filled with a demonic blood-red color. What? Elder Black Fist is dead. Lan Hai also noticed the Black Fist Elder who had exploded into a bloody mist. His pupils shrunk to the size of needles as he let out a loud cry and gave up on attacking Jioshuo. With a stomp of his foot, he hastily flew backwards. Retreat. Do you think you can retreat? Zhuo Wen's chilling voice rang out. Then, he immediately unleashed the Morning Treasure Seal. Waves of sorrowful curse-like aura lingered around Elder Lan Hai, causing the latter to immediately feel powerless. His retreating speed also became much slower. Swoosh. Zhuowen's blood hair fluttered as he stepped in the air and appeared before Elder Blue Ocean in an instant. He pulled out the blood spear, blood qi filled the treasure seal, and it shot towards Elder Blue Ocean. Blue Heart Sea Art. Elder Lan Hai's eyes were gloomy as he formed a seal with both of his hands. Immediately, surging Yuan power gushed out from within his body, forming clusters of surging blue seas that surrounded Elder Lan Hai. Mo Sho Mo Sho. Zhuo Wen spat out two words indifferently. The blood-red spear in front of him split into 10, and the 10 spears fell from the sky one after another. They heavily slammed into the blue sea. Every single spear seemed to contain a towering mountain. The pressure they gave off was shocking. Boom boom boom. Spear after spear. Elder Blue Ocean snorted. His footsteps were weak as he retreated. In addition to the curse of Zhuowen's Morning Treasure Seal, Elder Blue Ocean's strength had decreased by 30%. He could not withstand a single blow from the blood spears. 10th spear. A cold voice rang out. Zhuowen took a step in the air and held the 10th blood spear. He raised it high above his head with his right hand and slammed it down on the 9th blood spear. Bang bang bang. Continuous muffled sounds were heard. Then, the blue sea in front of Elder Blue Ocean was crushed into countless blue powder under the pressure of this terrifying power. Elder Blue Ocean vomited a mouthful of blood and retreated. His face was pale and his body was extremely weak. Die. Zhuowen came again. The blood spear was like an electric drill as it spun violently towards Elder Blue Ocean's heart. He wanted to kill Elder Blue Ocean in a single blow. How dare you kill Elder Blue Ocean? Shouted the Patriarch furiously. Then, the Patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect descended from the sky like a rock spreading its wings. In a flash, he arrived above Zhuowen and threw a punch. His pure qi turned into a gigantic hand which moved towards Zhuowen. He wanted to kill him. If I, Zhuowen, want to kill someone, even if you're at the top of the Zun Qi layer, you won't be able to stop me. Zhuowen's blood-red eyes were still as cold as a demon's. The bloody aura on his body instantly surged to the extreme. At the same time, clouds of blood appeared above his head. Zhuowen's blood-red hair began to rapidly grow to his waist. Second level of the bedevilment realm, shouted Zhuowen in a low voice. Terrifying blood qi rose up in the air and turned into a terrifying qi. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect's hand was crushed by Zhuowen's qi. Zhuowen shot out like an arrow and arrived in front of Elder Lan Hai. No. Don't kill me, shouted Elder Blue Ocean. Die. Zhuowen coldly spoke as the blood-red spear shot out in an instant, piercing through Elder Blue Sea's forehead. Next, Elder Blue Sea's life force was completely severed by Zhuowen, turning him into a corpse. Ah! You bastard! When the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect saw Elder Blue Ocean's corpse, he went crazy. His eyes were bloodshot and his robe was fluttering in the wind. He threw another punch at Zhuowen. That little bastard had killed 2 Zun Qi elders of the Xiao Yarrow sect. If he didn't kill him, he wouldn't be worthy of being the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. Morning Treasure Seal. When Zhuowen saw the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect, he used the Morning Treasure Seal again. At the same time, 3 lightning wings appeared on his back. He turned into a flash of lightning and disappeared from the Xiao Yarrow sect. Because of the Morning Treasure Seal, the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect couldn't attack Lin Fan. The entire square fell into a strange silence. Everyone looked at the corpses of Elder Black Fist and Elder Lan Hai, who had been killed in an instant. Suddenly, they didn't know what to say. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. 2 early celestial venerables of the Xiao Yarrow sect had died at the hands of an early golden venerable. They thought it was crazy. Whoosh! With a flash of lightning, Zhuowen arrived before Jianan, Jiashou, and Xian Xing at the edge of the plaza. He transmitted his voice to the 3 of them. The 3 of you should leave first. Staying here won't do you any good. Brother Zhuo. We're not leaving, said Gatha stubbornly. Yes. Brother Zhuo, we can't let you face the Xiao Yarrow sect alone. Didn't you say that if you want to be strong, you have to be fearless? If you want to become an expert, then you must have a fearless heart. If we shrink back under your protection, then how could we possibly become experts? Jianan clenched his fists tightly as he spoke. Zhuowen looked at Jianan in surprise. He nodded and said, since it's that way, you can stay here. You can deal with the disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect. I'll take care of the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and the other 3 elders. When Zhuowen said that, the 3 elders of the Xiao Yarrow sect looked glum. This little bastard was too arrogant. He dared say that in front of them. He didn't know what was good for him. Brother Zhuo, since you're not leaving, you can't forget about me. At the same time, a clear voice came from the crowd in the square. Then, a demonic man in a black robe landed beside Zhuowen. Brother Mo. So you're here too. Jianan, Jiashou, and Xian Xing revealed an excited expression in their eyes when they saw this demonic man. Clearly, they did not expect that Mo Lingtian would actually come and rescue them. Brother Mo cares about you guys a lot. He came to West Trace City 3 days earlier than me, Zhuowen said with a smile. Mo Lingtian felt a little embarrassed when he saw Zhuowen's teasing smile. On the other hand, Jianan and the other 2 revealed a touched expression in their eyes as a warm current flowed through their hearts. Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian really treated them as friends and were willing to take the risk to come to West Slope City for them to help them resolve their problems and share their hardships. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's solve the problem in front of us first. Mo Lingtian waved his hand and stared at the people from the unfettered sect. There were a lot of disciples from the unfettered sect in the unfettered square. There were almost 100 of them, and they were all elites of the unfettered sect. Most of them were supremes, and some were even golden exalts. This was a strong force. Although Mo Lingtian was strong, Jianan and Gatha's armor souls were not ordinary. It was difficult for them to face such a force. 5 ants want to fight against the unfettered sect. You're courting death. The unfettered sect master's eyes were cold. He turned to the 2 rows of disciples behind him and said, "Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive." Yes. The 100 disciples of the unfettered sect cupped their hands and shouted in unison. Then, they formed a mysterious formation and surrounded Zhuowen and the others. They pointed their swords at Zhuowen and the others. "As for you, get the hell out here. I'll kill you myself." When the disciples of the unfettered sect surrounded Zhuowen, the unfettered sect master appeared above them and pointed at Zhuowen. Zhuowen had killed 2 celestial exalts in front of him. It was a humiliation for the unfettered sect. Besides, he was able to kill early celestial exalts, which meant that he was very strong. The disciples of the unfettered sect couldn't fight against him. That was why the unfettered sect master had asked Zhuowen to deal with him. "Brother Mo, the 4 of you should be careful. Also, Kanan and Jasher, make good use of your armor souls. That way, you will have unexpected gains," said Zhuowen to the 4 of them. Then, he jumped in front of the unfettered sect master. He knew that if he killed the unfettered sect master, the unfettered sect would collapse. "You're quite talented. You managed to kill Black Fist and Blue Ocean from the Xiao Yarrow sect. It seems like you're quite a famous genius in the Divine College. But so what if you're a monstrous genius in Jioshan University? Don't even think about leaving after killing my disciples. You'll stay here forever." Chapter 1054. The strength of the Buddha and the demon. The atmosphere of the entire Xiao Yarrow Square was extremely heavy, even a little oppressive. Close to 100 disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect surrounded Jianan, Mo Lingtian, and the other 2. Their sharp swords were all pointed at the 4 of them without exception. In this pitch-black night, it was extremely eye-catching. The patriarch of the Carefree sect and the other 3 elders were staring coldly at Zhuowen, who had red hair and red eyes and was holding a blood spear. The 2 of them were facing each other in the air. The atmosphere was oppressive. The crowd held their breaths as they watched the scene. Zhuowen and Mo Lingtian were only 5 people, but they were facing nearly 100 elite disciples of the Carefree sect. The young man with the blood spear was arrogant enough to face the patriarch of the Carefree sect and the other 3 elders at the same time. A mere martial artist in the initial stage of the Golden Venerate realm actually intended to face 4 heavenly venerates at the same time, including a peak heavenly venerate supreme master. In the eyes of many, this was an act of seeking death. However, the crowd didn't think so. The young man with red hair and red eyes was much stronger than they had expected. The 2 early celestial venerables of the Carefree sect, He Quan and Lan Hai, had been killed in front of the crowd. The crowd didn't dare to underestimate the young man. Even so, they still thought that he was going to face 4 celestial venerables at the same time. There was even a peak celestial venerable cultivator among them. Such a lineup was too arrogant. The chances of him winning weren't high. "You're quite brave. You actually dare to face the 4 of us." The patriarch of the Carefree sect stared at Zhuowen with a murderous look in his eyes. The most talented disciple of the Carefree sect, Bai Yishue, and the celestial venerable elder of the Carefree sect had been killed by him. The patriarch of the Carefree sect hated Zhuowen so much that he couldn't wait to kill him. "Why not? Your unfettered sect's Empyrean martial artists don't seem to be much either," Zhuowen said indifferently. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and his disciples weren't like the Jioshan University. They didn't have a cultivation tower that could temper their meridians. The disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect were much weaker than the Jioshan University. Take Black Fist and Lan Hai, who Zhuowen had just killed, for example. Although they were both at the early stage of the heavenly venerable realm like Liu Xiong, there was still a huge gap between them and Liu Xiong. With Zhuowen's strength, he did not need to enter the demonized state to kill Black Fist and Blue Ocean. However, doing so would waste a lot of time. Back then, the situation had been critical. Zhuowen had needed to end the battle quickly. Hence, he had used the demonized state. As expected, when Zhuowen said that, the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and the 3 elders pulled a long face. This young man was really fearless. He dared talk like that in front of the 4 celestial Zun masters. He wanted to die. "Since you want to die, I'll help you. Let's attack together and kill him," said the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect to the 3 old men behind him. He stomped on the ground and purple lightning emerged from his hands. His entire body was enveloped by the purple lightning. The purple lightning exploded and the purple lightning descended. The 3 old men behind the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect looked furious, especially the one whose right arm had been destroyed by Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with murder. "Die!" shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect furiously. In a flash, the 4 cultivators moved towards Zhuowen and surrounded him. At the same time, 4 terrifying energies emerged from the 4 cultivators' hands. Their pure qi was like a blue whale spitting out water. It looked like fireworks in the sky. Zhuowen's eyes were bloodshot. He looked calm and indifferent. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and the other 4 cultivators attacked him, Zhuowen moved. He spun on his feet and waved his blood spear in his right hand. Blood qi gushed out and formed a terrifying vortex. He was as immovable as a mountain, but he moved as fast as lightning. Boom, boom, boom. The vortex was like a perfect defense. Even though the 4 old men's attacks were terrifying, when they entered the vortex, it was as if they had entered a swamp. Hey! Interesting. We don't need to be merciful. Let's join hands and kill him. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect saw that the 4 old men's attacks had been destroyed by the vortex, his face stiffened. However, he looked even more furious. The purple lightning in his hands was becoming more and more intense. It was as if lightning had descended from the sky. It was terrifying. The other 3 elders nodded as the aura on their bodies rose to the extreme. Their palms spat out with the power of a rainbow piercing through the sun. The terrifying strength qi formed a spiral shape as it suddenly swept out and heavily smashed onto the blood-colored vortex. Lightning punishment. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect didn't want to be outdone. When the purple lightning in his hands reached the maximum, he raised his hands and a ball of lightning appeared. It was as big as a palm and it moved towards the sky. After that, dark clouds started to condense in the sky. Purple lightning snakes appeared in the clouds. It looked terrifying. Boom boom. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect jumped up and raised his right hand. The dark clouds started rolling and the purple lightning condensed into 100 Zhonglong purple python. The purple python roared furiously and swooped down towards the blood-colored whirlpool below. After which, it plunged headfirst into the whirlpool. Instantly, terrifying purple lightning filled the air. After which, the originally indestructible blood-colored whirlpool started to tremble violently. Catcher! The sound of something shattering rang out. The purple python was too terrifying. With a casual swing of its tail, it was able to produce tens of thousands of bolts of purple lightning. Although the blood-red vortex's defense was tough, it still couldn't withstand the attack of the purple python. Boom! When the cracks spread all over the blood-red whirlpool, it finally collapsed. Then, a figure with blood-red hair and eyes flew out of the shattered blood-red whirlpool. Die! Shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect furiously. The purple python moved towards the silhouette with red hair. Zhuowen looked surprised. He hadn't thought that the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect would be so strong. He had broken through the vortex's defense. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect raised his blood spear and condensed a terrifying amount of blood qi. It turned into a 10 Zhonglong blood spear. That blood spear looked like a blood bridge. Boom boom boom. Just as the blood-red spear shadow appeared, the purple python had already arrived. It opened its bloody mouth that was filled with purple lightning and countless purple lightning swallowed and spat out. Its power was enormous and terrifying. The blood-red spear shadow actually froze in midair under the might of the purple lightning python and then continuously retreated. Zhuowen's face changed. He jumped up and landed on the blood spear. His right hand was filled with blood qi and he punched the spear. Whoosh! Under Zhuowen's palm strike, the blood-colored spear shadow, which had been retreating repeatedly, stopped its retreat. It's useless, shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect furiously. He also landed on the purple python and put his hands on the python's head. Purple lightning kept pouring into the python's body. He wanted to make the purple python go berserk. Roar! A mournful roar resounded. The purple lightning on the huge purple python's body was extremely frightening. Its huge snake body continuously twisted and turned, emitting an extremely frightening and huge force. Boom, boom, boom. Zhuowen was standing in the air with his right hand on the blood spear. He could feel that the python was going berserk. He couldn't help but step back. His face looked glum. How dare you provoke the Xiao Yarrow sect? I think you don't know how to write the word death. A chilling voice rang out from behind Zhuowen, who was retreating. Soon after, Zhuowen could clearly hear the terrifying sound of something breaking through the air. Clearly, someone was planning to launch a sneak attack. Nirvana of the Great Sun. At that moment, Zhuowen, who was in a demonic state, used the Nirvana of the Great Sun. In a flash, he had 4 heads and 8 arms. Suddenly, the golden Buddha's light and the blood-red demon's chi started fusing together. Surprisingly, a strange power was created. A skinny palm suddenly surged over and ruthlessly imprinted itself on Zhuowen's back. Then, Zhuowen saw a hideous grin on his face. It was actually the purple-robed elder whose right hand had been crippled by him. The old man in the purple robe had a hideous smile on his face. He had been preparing for that attack for a long time. He had been waiting for the moment when Zhuowen was defenseless. Therefore, he was extremely proud of himself. Because he determined that Zhuowen would definitely suffer an extremely serious injury after receiving his palm strike. At that time, how would this kid be able to resist their sect master? However, the moment the purple-robed old man's right hand landed on Zhuowen's back, his expression changed. This was because he sensed an extremely violent energy from Zhuowen. Moreover, the energy gave him a feeling that he could not resist it. What kind of energy is this? The old man in the purple robe quickly noticed that the Buddha's light and the demon's chi on Zhuowen's body emitted a strange energy. This energy was very unstable and violent. It seemed like it could explode at any time. Moreover, this energy was like a maggot in one's bones. It followed the old man's palm and entered his body. What was even more strange was that the moment this energy entered his meridians, it violently exploded. In an instant, the meridians in his left arm exploded under this strange energy. Ah, what kind of energy is this? Why is it so strange? The purple-clothed old man miserably howled. He wanted to withdraw his left arm that was imprinted on Zhuowen's back. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He grabbed the left arm that the old man was about to withdraw. After the sneak attack, you plan to run? Zhuowen's cold voice rang out. Then, the terrifying Buddha's demonic energy blasted into the old man's body. Suddenly, the Buddha's demonic energy began to explode in the old man's meridians. Poochie. In just an instant, the old man in the purple robe began to bleed from his 7 orifices. His body exploded into a bloody mist. His eyes were wide open and he died with a grievance. After killing the old man in the purple robe, Zhuowen let out a muffled groan. He quickly dispelled the nirvana of the Great Sun. His eyes revealed a trace of horror. Chapter 1055. Fearless of course, Zhuowen also discovered that when the Buddhist energy and the demonic energy merged together, the strange energy produced not only had the effect of destroying the enemy's meridians, but it could also backfire on the user's meridians. Fortunately, Zhuowen had quickly dispelled the nirvana of the Great Sun. Additionally, his meridians had become abnormally strong after being tempered by the cultivation tower and meridian opening pill. Thus, Zhuowen did not suffer too much damage. However, Zhuowen was extremely fearful of this strange fusion of Buddha and devil. He was very clear that if he did not remove the Great Sun nirvana state in time, the consequences would be unimaginable. His meridians would definitely be severely damaged. How dare you kill Elder Ziyang? Die. The death of the elder in purple clothes infuriated the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. He was standing on the head of the purple python. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect shouted furiously. The purple python under his feet became even more terrifying. In a flash, purple lightning filled the sky and broke through the blood spear in Zhuowen's hand. Boom! In just an instant, the bloody spear that was over 100 feet long completely shattered under the attack of the purple lightning. It turned into a bloody powder that dissipated in the air. Whoosh! The blood spear was broken and the purple lightning filled the air. It was like maggots in a corpse. It extended towards Zhuowen. It wanted to kill Zhuowen completely. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and stepped back. However, the purple lightning was too fast. In a flash, it caught up with Zhuowen. There was a rumbling sound and it seemed like the purple lightning was going to corrode Zhuowen's entire body. Mo Sho. Zhuowen stomped his foot when he saw how swift the purple lightning was. Countless strands of blood qi suffused the air as the blood spear in his hand split into 10. They formed a blood-colored fence in front of him with the intention of blocking the terrifying purple lightning. Boom, boom, boom. The purple lightning arrived before the blood-colored fence in an instant. Following that, an extremely terrifying muffled thunder-like sound rang out. Zhuowen frowned slightly. The might of the purple lightning had exceeded his expectations. The blood-colored fence in front of him actually showed signs of collapsing. Retreat! Zhuowen shouted indifferently. His blood-red hair fluttered as he suddenly flew backwards. The moment he retreated, the blood-red fence was completely annihilated by the purple lightning. As for Zhuowen, he had already retreated dozens of steps away. His gaze was indifferent as he stared at the destroyed blood-colored fence. You run away faster than a mouse. Purple lightning flashed and the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect arrived in front of the blood-red fence. He looked at Zhuowen coldly. Everyone in the square was surprised when they saw this scene. This Zhuowen was really unusual. Not only were the 4 great Empyrean martial artists unable to take him down, he even killed a purple-robed old man. At that moment, the 100 or so disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect who were in the middle of the square also started to attack. Different colored energies turned into countless lights which surrounded Mo Lingtian, Jianan, Jiosho, and Xianxing. However, what surprised the crowd was that Mo Lingtian and the other 3 weren't ordinary cultivators. Even though they were surrounded by 100 disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect, they weren't defeated. On the contrary, they were in a stalemate with the disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect. They seemed to have the upper hand. Mo Lingtian had the purple luo flames. His entire body was covered in purple flames. He waved his hands and countless purple flowers bloomed. Many disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect were injured by the purple flames. At the same time, Jianan, who possessed the undying armor soul, had an extremely barbaric battle style. He was simply fighting with no regard for his life, exchanging injury for injury. After all, he possessed the undying armor soul. As long as he did not die and was able to protect his vitals, his injuries would be healed in an extremely short period of time. Jianan's barbaric fighting style caused many of the unfitted sect's disciples' eyelids to twitch. Their hearts shivered. This brat was simply a madman. He actually fought without regard for his life. Jiosho's Heaven's Wrath Armor Soul was even more mysterious and powerful than the immortal Armor Soul. The human figure covered in chains in the wind and snow could send supreme saints flying with a wave of its hands. Even the disciples of the Xiaoyaro sect at the Golden Venerate realm found it hard to resist. Although Xianxing's armor soul wasn't as strong as Jianan's and Jiosho's, her myriad star ceremony was quite powerful. Her strength was comparable to that of an ordinary supreme being, so she was able to withstand it. It wouldn't be easy for the disciples of the Carefree sect to attack Xianxing. With only 4 people, not only were they able to hold off nearly 100 disciples of the unfettered sect, but they were also able to suppress them. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and the other 2 celestial Zun elders also noticed what was going on. They looked glum. They hadn't thought that those 4 people would be able to defeat 100 elite disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect. How humiliating. One of you, go and kill those 4 people, said the leader of the unfettered sect, smiling coldly and ordering the 2 celestial Zun elders behind him. The white-robed elder among the 2 elders stood up abruptly. His pair of sinister triangular eyes stared at Mo Lingtian and the other 3 as he cackled, "Don't worry, sect leader. I'm here. Those 4 people are going to die. Finish them quickly. Why did you come back and kill this little bastard?" said the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect indifferently to the old man in the white robe. "Don't worry, it's just 4 ants. I won't drag this out for too long. I'll definitely end this quickly." The white-robed old man chuckled. With a stomp of his foot, he instantly rushed toward Mo Lingtian below. However, the moment the old man rushed out, a blood shadow also rushed out at the same time and blocked in front of the white-robed old man. "I'm your opponent. Why are you running?" Zhuo Wen raised his eyes slightly and looked directly at the white-robed old man before him. He grinned, revealing a row of cold white teeth, causing the white-robed old man's heart to tremble and his expression to stiffen. He had seen with his own eyes that the other 3 celestial Zun elders of the Carefree sect had been killed by this young man. He knew that he was as strong as the 3 celestial Zun elders who had been killed. Therefore, he was certain that he would die if he fought against this young man. "Run!" the old man in the white robe shouted in a low voice. He did not have the courage to face Zhuo Wen at all. He took a step forward and flew backward. His face was filled with fear. "Those are the elders of the Xiao Yarrow sect. They're as timid as a mouse." Zhuo Wen didn't chase after the old man in white clothes because the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect was standing behind the old man in white clothes. He was staring at Zhuo Wen. Zhuo Wen's words were loud and clear, and the entire Carefree Square heard him clearly. Many people looked at the white-robed old man, who was covering his head and running away like a rat, and shot him a strange look. A dignified early-stage heavenly venerable martial artist was actually so timid in front of an early-stage golden venerable martial artist. Anyone who saw this would find it very strange and strange. However, no one was surprised by the white-robed old man's actions because they had seen Zhuo Wen's combat strength with their own eyes. Zhuo Wen could easily kill early-stage heavenly venerables. It would be strange if the white-robed old man was not afraid. "Xiao Yarrow, old dog. You 3 can't even protect yourselves, why would you care about other people?" said Zhuo Wen arrogantly, looking at the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and the 2 elders next to him. "Very good. You were defeated by my attacks and now you're saying that we can't even protect ourselves. I don't know where you get your confidence from," said the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect coldly. Then, he said something to the 2 elders next to him. He jumped on the ground and the purple python moved towards Zhuo Wen again. The 2 elders didn't want to be outdone either. They followed the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect, one on his left and one on his right. They were waiting for an opportunity to attack. "It seems like I need to add fuel to the fire of the bedevilment." Zhuo Wen's eyes were cold. With a flick of his finger, he took out the bronze coffin and opened it by a third. Dense and terrifying blood-red energy surged out of the bronze coffin and enveloped Zhuo Wen. "Zhuo Wen, you little bastard! How dare you absorb my energy again?" When the bronze coffin was opened to absorb the blood demon's power, a shrill scream was heard. It was the voice of the blood demon sealed in the coffin. Zhuo Wen didn't care about the blood demon. He just kept absorbing the blood demon's energy. When the blood-red energy reached the limit of the bedevilment state, Zhuo Wen raised his head to the sky and shouted. A wave of blood-red chi spread out like a tsunami. Boom, boom, boom. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and the 2 elders who were riding the purple python also sensed Zhuo Wen's terrifying strength. After that, the 3 of them sensed a thick blood chi attack them. That chi was terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 of them couldn't help but retreat. Even the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect, who was riding the purple python, was pushed back a few steps. The purple python was surrounded by purple lightning, and its purple eyes were twinkling with fear. How come this guy's strength increased again? And it increased so much. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect was astonished. At that moment, Zhuo Wen gave him much more pressure than before. Die. At this moment, countless surging strands of bloody chi permeated Zhuo Wen's surroundings. His blood-red hair fluttered in the air like layers upon layers of waves. Zhuo Wen's blood-red eyes became even deeper. At this moment, Zhuo Wen was like a demon god of slaughter that had walked out from the depths of hell. His killing intent was monstrous, and blood clouds filled the sky. Boom. The instant Zhuo Wen spat out the word kill, he had already taken a step forward with his right foot. The power contained in this step was so great that even the surrounding space shook violently. Blood chi erupted, and a sea of blood began to fill the surroundings. At that moment, Zhuo Wen shot out like a cannonball. His entire body turned into a beam of blood and moved towards the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. So what if you've become stronger? You're just at the initial level of the Golden Sun layer. You can't defeat me. Die. Chapter 1056. Carefree Sword Boom. Zhuo Wen had turned into a beam of blood-red light. A terrifying blood-red energy filled the air and turned into a blood-red whirlpool. In the end, the whirlpool bombarded the purple lightning sea around the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. Bang bang bang. Sounds of intense collisions rang out continuously. Then, the blood-red energy and the purple lightning continued to entangle in the void. It was as though two ancient beasts were engaged in a fierce battle. Everyone in the square was somewhat shocked as they watched this scene. Such an intense collision was not something that they could handle. Just the aftermath of the collision between the bloody light and the lightning caused everyone to feel as if the heavens were crushing down on them. A trace of reverence involuntarily rose in their hearts. This damned little bastard, how did his strength increase so much? The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect was furious. He hadn't thought that Zhuo Wen would become so strong after absorbing the blood demon's strength. Now, the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect could sense that Zhuo Wen was a threat to him. At this moment, Zhuo Wen was in the middle of the purple lightning. Countless blood qi surged around him, resisting the powerful purple lightning that was constantly spreading around him. At the same time, he took a step forward. His blood qi was like the best defense, impenetrable by tens of thousands of lightning. Whoosh! Inside the purple lightning, Zhuo Wen broke through the sea of purple lightning and passed by the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. Leader of the Xiao Yarrow sect. I'll be the last to deal with you. You still have a little time to live, said Zhuo Wen indifferently. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect was surprised at first, but then he reacted and shouted, "Oh no, elders." As expected, when the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect turned around, he saw that Zhuo Wen was already flying towards the two celestial Zun elders behind him. "You two, hurry up and run," shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. He sounded worried. Zhuo Wen was even stronger than before. Back then, Zhuo Wen was already strong enough to kill cultivators of the initial celestial Zun layer. Now, he was even stronger. The moment the Xiao Yarrow sect shouted, the two Zhonglai realized that something was wrong. When they saw Zhuo Wen rushing towards them, they panicked. "Run!" The white-robed old man from earlier let out a furious roar and directly rushed to the back, fleeing without a trace. The other old man's reaction was a little slower, but it was this momentary distraction that allowed Zhuo Wen to catch up to him. "Die!" Zhuo Wen fiercely swung his bloody spear. Immediately, a terrifying blood qi converged. Numerous blood-colored spear shadows completely enveloped the old man who was half a beat slower. Ah! A horrible shriek spread in the air. The old man was covered by the blood-red spear shadows and turned into a bloody mist. That son of a bitch! The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect pulled a long face. He hadn't thought that another celestial Zun elder of the Xiao Yarrow sect would die. Out of the 5 celestial Zun elders, only the old man in white was left. The other 4 had all been killed by Zhuo Wen. "I want you to die," shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect furiously. The purple lightning around his body became even more violent as it moved towards Zhuo Wen. It formed a gigantic lightning bridge in the sky. Zhuo Wen's blood-red eyes were filled with indifference. He pushed out with his right hand and blood-red energy immediately surged out, forming a circular blood-red barrier in front of him. Boom! Purple lightning filled the air and smashed onto the circular blood-colored barrier. However, it only caused the blood-colored barrier to shake a little before it did not budge at all. At the same time, Zhuo Wen spread his wings like a giant rock and instantly shot out in pursuit of the rapidly fleeing white-robed old man. With 3 pairs of lightning wings and the strength of the blood demon, Zhuo Wen was unbelievably fast. He caught up with the old man in white in the blink of an eye. "You can't escape," said Zhuo Wen coldly. Then, he raised his right hand and punched the old man with a terrifying strength. The white-robed old man only felt a cold wind blowing behind his back. He discovered that Zhuo Wen had unknowingly appeared behind him. Zhuo Wen's right hand was raised high. His palm contained a continuously changing blood ball. Although the blood ball was small, the power contained within it caused the white-robed old man to faintly feel apprehensive. Stop him. The white-robed elder's eyes flashed with a cold light. He knew that it was time for him to put his life on the line. He had to give it his all. Then, his right hand formed a palm. White light burst out from his palm as he slammed it towards Zhuo Wen. Boom boom. When the two palms collided, the white light on the white-robed old man's right palm was like a candle in the wind, instantly extinguishing. Then, the demonic blood ball in Zhuo Wen's palm began to expand, and a terrifying blood-colored energy surged out and drilled into the white-robed old man's body. Ah! With a blood-curdling scream, the white-robed old man's right arm was corroded by the blood-colored energy and completely exploded into fine powder. Zhuo Wen was not going to let the white-robed old man off. His left palm, which had been accumulating power, went straight for the white-robed old man's chest. Poochie. His left palm landed heavily on the white-robed old man's chest, and a demonic blood-red color exploded. The white-robed old man's face revealed an expression of extreme pain. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his face was deathly pale. Die. Zhuo Wen's expression did not change. Yuan power once again spat out from his left palm. The white-robed elder did not even have the chance to groan before he exploded into a bloody mist. The yuanying hidden in his dantian was also completely annihilated by this terrifying palm force. It simply did not have any chance to escape. So far, 5 elders of the Xiaoyaro sect had been killed by Zhuo Wen alone. When the white-robed old man exploded into a bloody mist, many people below the square were stunned. Although Zhuo Wen's battle strength was terrifying from the very beginning and everyone had a very high evaluation of him, Zhuo Wen's battle strength was extremely terrifying. But this time, Zhuo Wen had killed 3 celestial Zun elders in front of the patriarch of the Xiaoyaro sect. In other words, even the patriarch of the Xiaoyaro sect couldn't stop Zhuo Wen from killing the celestial Zun elders. Did that mean that Zhuo Wen was as strong as the patriarch of the Xiaoyaro sect? The sect leader of the Xiaoyaro sect was glaring furiously, his hair standing on end. The young sect leader was dead, Bai Yixue was dead, and now the 5 celestial venerable elders were dead as well. Even if the patriarch of the carefree sect could kill Zhuo Wen, the carefree sect would suffer a great loss. They would never be as glorious as they used to be. All of this was caused by the young man with red hair and red eyes. Zhuo Wen looked calm when he saw the patriarch of the carefree sect's furious expression. He pointed his spear at the patriarch of the carefree sect and said indifferently, "Now it's your turn, old dog. Ah, I'll make sure you die a horrible death." The patriarch of the Xiaoyaro sect raised his head to the sky and shouted furiously. Then, he jumped forwards. He didn't jump towards Zhuo Wen, he jumped towards the gigantic statue in front of the Xiaoyaro square. That statue was the image of the first patriarch of the Xiaoyaro sect. The Xiaoyaro sect had built it to commemorate the first patriarch of the Xiaoyaro sect who had founded the prosperous West Path city and the powerful Xiaoyaro sect. What is the patriarch of the carefree sect doing? Why is he stepping on the statue of the first patriarch of the carefree sect? The people in the square didn't understand why the patriarch of the Xiaoyaro sect was doing that. They didn't know what he was trying to do. Zhuo Wen was also staring at the patriarch of the carefree sect. He had a bad feeling. Stop him. No matter what the patriarch of the carefree sect wanted to do, Zhuo Wen didn't want to let him live. The first patriarch of the unfettered sect founded West Path City and the unfettered sect. He was also a powerful great emperor. Do you really think that's all the unfettered sect has? You killed the young patriarch of the carefree sect, the first disciple of the carefree sect, Bai Yixue, and the 5 elders of the carefree sect. You must receive the harshest punishment, said the patriarch of the Xiaoyaro sect. He stretched out his right hand and a strange hand seal appeared. Then, he punched the head of the statue. Boom! The huge stone statue began to tremble violently, and terrifying cracks began to appear on its surface. The cracks grew larger and larger, and finally, the entire stone statue collapsed and shattered. A ray of white light, like a scorching sun, burst out from the stone statue, illuminating the pitch-black carefree square as if it was daytime. A ring-shaped wave of air spread out from the stone statue. Under the impact of this wave of air, Zhuo Wen was blown away before he could reach the stone statue. His feet took several steps in the air before he barely managed to stabilize his body. What a terrifying power! What's inside the statue? Zhuo Wen's gaze became extremely solemn. The force of impact emanating from the stone statue was terrifying. It actually gave him a feeling of being unable to resist. Everybody in the square was pushed back a few hundred meters before they could stabilize themselves. They looked at the broken statue and the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect, who was standing on top of the statue's head with fear in their eyes. The eyes of the unfettered sect's disciples, who were originally entangled with Mo Lingtian, Jianan, and the other two, were filled with fanaticism. They immediately retreated into the distance and no longer paid any attention to Mo Lingtian, Jianan, and the other two. Ancestral weapon. The patriarch is about to use his ancestral weapon. The disciples of the carefree sect who had retreated knelt down on one knee. They looked at the crumbling statue with excited eyes and murmured to themselves. On the other hand, Mo Lingtian, Jianan, and the other two were baffled. When they saw the unfettered sect's disciple retreat, they naturally followed suit. What's going on? What does the patriarch of the carefree sect want to do? Jianan looked at the statue in front of her with worry. According to the disciples of the carefree sect, the patriarch of the carefree sect is going to use his ancestral weapon. But I don't know what this ancestral weapon is. Mo Lingtian frowned. He was also confused. Boom. Chapter 1057. Two emperor weapons. When the white long sword appeared in front of the crowd, a majestic force gushed out like a stormy sea. The immense pressure and peerless power caused the surrounding space to become extremely unstable. The surface of the white longsword shone with a divine light. Waves of milky white halos rotated on the surface of the sword. It was like the halos contained in the sun. It was dazzling and could not be looked at directly. Under the milky white halos, there was a solemn and powerful aura. It was like a high and mighty emperor. That's the Xiao Yarou sword? It's actually the Xiao Yarou sword that belonged to the first sect master of the Xiao Yarou sect. Some of the sharp-eyed people in the square immediately recognized the white long sword in the palm of the Xiao Yarou sect's sect master. The first sect master of the Xiao Yarou sect was a legendary figure in West Path City. There were countless rumors about his sword, the Xiao Yarou sword. It was said that when West Path City was first built, there were 3 Emperor Realm cultivators who coveted this place. They joined forces to kill the first patriarch of the carefree sect. However, the first patriarch of the carefree sect held the carefree sword in his hand and fought against the 3 Emperor Realm cultivators alone. In the end, the 3 Emperor Realm cultivators were defeated and fled in panic. Although it had been a long time, the Xiao Yarou sword was still very famous in West Path City. Even now, many people still talked about the Xiao Yarou sword. However, since the first sect master of the Xiao Yarou sect left after establishing the Xiao Yarou sect, the Xiao Yarou sword had completely disappeared from everyone's sight. All the cultivators in West Path City thought that the unfettered sword had been taken away by the first patriarch of the unfettered sect. They had never thought that it would be left in the unfettered sect. Moreover, the people of the unfettered sect had hidden the unfettered sword in the statue of the first patriarch. Emperor weapon? Zhuowen also heard the discussion below. He stared at the white long sword in the hand of the Xiao Yarou sect's sect master. The long sword gave him a faint sense of danger. Zhuowen had felt this feeling from Emperor Qing's peach blossom origin painting and murderous abstinence blade. Now, he felt a familiar sense of danger from the Xiao Yarou sword. Obviously, the Xiao Yarou sword was an emperor weapon. After all, it was the sword of the first sect master of the Xiao Yarou sect. The sword of an emperor realm cultivator naturally had to be an emperor weapon. Not good. It's a monarch weapon. The Xiao Yarou sect has a monarch weapon? Mo Lingtian, who was standing at the edge of the square, couldn't help but shriek. What should we do? Although Brother Zhuo is very strong, he's at most on par with the Xiao Yarou sect's sect master. Now that the Xiao Yarou sect's sect master has an emperor weapon, Brother Zhuo doesn't have such a powerful weapon. The two of them are not on equal footing, Jianan said anxiously. Gatha and Xian Xing were also worried. Originally, when Zhuowen killed the 5 elders of the Xiao Yarou sect, the 4 of them had felt the dawn of victory. Now that the Xiao Yarrow sword had appeared, their hearts sank to the bottom. This young man is already very extraordinary. He can actually force the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master to this extent. I'm afraid that even if he dies under the Xiao Yarrow sword, he will die in peace. Not only did he kill the first disciple of the Xiao Yarrow sect, Bai Yixue, but he also killed the 5 elders of the Xiao Yarrow sect. Even if he dies at the hands of the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master, I'm afraid his name will spread throughout the entire West Path City. Even the entire Excellent Spirit Island will spread his name. When the Xiao Yarrow sword appeared, everyone in the Xiao Yarrow square involuntarily looked at the red-haired, red-eyed young man standing on the other side of the void. Everyone's eyes were filled with a trace of pity. The battle strength that Zhuo Wen had displayed had truly shocked everyone in the square. They were all able to predict that if Zhuo Wen did not die, with the talent and strength that he had displayed, his future would be limitless. However, he was about to die under the unfettered sword. No one even thought that Zhuo Wen was lucky, because a peak heavenly master with an emperor weapon could unleash a terrifying battle prowess. Perhaps he still wasn't a match for a martial emperor, but at least he already had a part of the martial emperor's power. Below the martial emperor realm, all are ants. This was a popular saying in the Heavenly Armor continent, which perfectly explained the power and terror of a martial emperor. No matter how monstrous one's talent was, or how powerful one's strength was, in front of a martial emperor, one was a complete ant. Even though the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master couldn't fully unleash the martial emperor's power with the Xiao Yarrow sword, even a part of its power was extremely terrifying. Even a peak heavenly master would perish in the hands of the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master. At that moment, the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master looked high-spirited and high-spirited. His hair was fluttering in the wind, making him look like a celestial being. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect noticed that everybody was looking at him with different expressions. Some were surprised, some were jealous, some were self-abased, some were in awe. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect was satisfied with all the negative emotions. He smiled faintly. At that moment, he was high up in the air, enjoying the attention of the crowd. The Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master was very satisfied. Then, he looked past the crowd and landed on the young man who had injured the unfettered sect. He wanted to see all kinds of negative emotions in the young man's eyes. However, when the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master looked at Zhuo Wen, his face stiffened. Because he didn't see the slightest trace of unusual emotion in Zhuo Wen's eyes. There was only that indifferent expression from the beginning to the end, as if there was nothing in the world that could make this pair of indifferent eyes reveal any other unusual splendor. Zhuo Wen looked cold and indifferent. He was as calm as water. You're truly able to keep your composure. You're actually able to pretend to be so calm before the might of an emperor weapon. However, you can continue to pretend as much as you can now. Let's see if you can still pretend to be so calm when this old man kills you later, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect mockingly. He couldn't help but laugh at Zhuo Wen. Are you done talking? If you're done, come here and die, said Zhuo Wen indifferently, ignoring the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master's mockery. The Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master's face stiffened again. Then, his face turned red and he shouted furiously, "You've got balls. We're already at this stage and you still dare to provoke me? Good, good, good. Today, I'll make you wish you were dead. You'll regret living in this world." Then, the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master stomped on the ground and shot towards Zhuo Wen like a cannonball. The Xiao Yarrow sword in his hand was dazzling. At that moment, the Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master looked like he was holding the sun. He's really tired of living. The Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master has a great imperial weapon like the Xiao Yarrow sword and he dares to provoke him. He's really reckless. Everybody was astonished. Zhuo Wen's behavior was beyond their expectations. Of course, after being astonished for a while, they started to gloat. That young man had dared to provoke the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. That was a stupid thing to do. Brother Mo, what should we do now? The Xiao Yarrow sect's sect master with the Xiao Yarrow sword is too strong. Brother Zhuo is in danger. Jianan leaped up anxiously, and he actually intended to flash towards Zhuo Wen. However, Mo Lingtian stopped him, and Mo Lingtian said with a solemn expression, "You're mad. With your cultivation level, you're going to die. Then are we just going to sit here and wait for our deaths and watch as Big Brother Zhuo is killed? Kanan roared out. Jianan, don't worry. Can't you see that Brother Zhuo looks calm? From what I can see, Brother Zhuo, you must have some trump cards that you don't fear the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so calm, said Mo Lingtian. Jianan was stunned, and then he calmed down. Mo Lingtian's analysis was correct. Zhuo Wen was too calm right now, calm to the point of being terrifying. Clearly, Zhuo Wen might have some sort of powerful trump card up his sleeve. Besides, Jianan's cultivation level was low. If he went up, he would only be a burden to Zhuowen. Let's just wait and see. If Brother Zhuo can't defeat him, we'll all die together. Mo Lingtian slowly raised his head at this moment, and his gaze focused on Zhuo Wen's tall and straight back as he muttered in a low voice. Jianan, Gatha, and Xianxing nodded. They were also looking at Zhuo Wen's back. They were ready to die. Whoosh! The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect arrived in front of Zhuo Wen. His eyes were filled with dazzling lights. He smiled cruelly and slowly raised his right hand. His Xiao Yarrow sword was shining brighter and brighter as if it was going to disperse all the darkness in the sky. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect smiled like a blooming chrysanthemum. He knew that the young man with red hair was going to die under that sword. He was definitely going to die. That's what you get for provoking the Xiao Yarrow sect. Now, you're going to pay with your life, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. He was laughing like a maniac. Do you think you can kill me with just an emperor weapon? At this moment, Zhuo Wen also raised his head. His blood-red eyes were still as cold as a demon's as he slowly spoke in an indifferent voice. You're really stubborn. You've already reached this point, yet you still think that I can't kill you. You're delusional, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect, smiling coldly. He raised his Xiao Yarrow sword above his head and a milky white light appeared. It looked like the sun was about to explode, and lava was pouring out of the sword. Of course you can't kill me because you're not the only one who has a great imperial weapon. I have one too. As he spoke, a torrential killing intent surged out of Zhuo Zhangwen's body. Soon after, a blood-red blade slashed through the air. A torrential pressure came crashing down, as if mountains were descending from the sky. Chapter 1058. The Patriarch's Godly Consciousness Clang. The sound of metal colliding resounded. Shortly after, the blood-red Buddhist commandment blade hit the carefree sword, creating a terrifying energy vortex. Soon after, the energy ripples spread out. The entire carefree square, and even the mountain range where the carefree sect was located, shook violently. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone on the Liberty Square staggered under this violent tremor. Some of the weaker warriors even fell to the ground, their limbs supporting them as they trembled. That collision was terrifying. Everybody was terrified. The Xiao Yarrow sect was trembling because of the shockwaves. 4 Zun cultivators were only capable of using that kind of power. Boom, boom, boom. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect was astonished. He was pushed back a few steps. His right hand was shaking violently and his thumb was numb. Boom. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect stepped back, the people who had just regained their balance noticed him. Immediately after, the crowd burst into an uproar. The uproar was getting louder and louder. It was like a tsunami spreading through the entire square. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect was pushed back? How is that possible? He's holding the Xiao Yarrow sword. Everybody was staring at the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. They were astonished. If the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect hadn't been holding the Xiao Yarrow sword, nobody would have been surprised. However, he was holding the Xiao Yarrow sword and was retreating. Everybody was astonished. An emperor weapon already possessed a portion of the power of an emperor realm expert. Even if the wielder's strength was not at the emperor realm, he could still use a portion of the emperor realm expert's power by relying on the emperor might in the emperor realm. However, even a portion of the power was not something 4 venerables could withstand. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect had the Xiao Yarrow sword. He was much stronger than an ordinary celestial master. He could even fight against a great emperor of the first layer. However, He had been pushed back by Zhuowen. He hadn't been pushed back by one step, he had been pushed back a few steps. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Everybody looked at the young man with blood-red hair who was standing in front of the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect. The young man looked as cold as a demon. Above his head, there was a blood-red Buddhist commandment blade. That blade had blocked the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect's Xiao Yarou sword and forced the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect to retreat. Is that a great emperor's weapon too? Everyone's eyes were fixed on the blood-red Buddhist commandment blade. The majestic aura emitted by the blade made everyone tremble with fear. It was not any weaker than the carefree sword. Some of the sharper ones even discovered that the aura of the blade was even more terrifying than the carefree sword. Nobody would have thought that the young man of the golden Zun Qi cultivator would have a great emperor's weapon. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect had a great imperial weapon, the Xiao Yarou sword, but nobody was surprised. After all, the Xiao Yarou sect had existed for hundreds of years. However, the young man with blood-red hair was alone and had a great imperial weapon, which was incredible. Brother Zhuo, you have a great emperor's weapon too? This. Jianan was stunned. He stared fixedly at the Buddhist monk's blade on Zhuo Wen's body as his eyes were filled with admiration and surprise. Not only Jianan, but Mo Lingtian, Gatha, and Xian Xing were also astonished. When they saw how calm Zhuowen was, they knew that Zhuowen had a trump card. However, when Zhuowen revealed his trump card, the three of them never expected that it would give them such a huge shock. It was actually a terrifyingly powerful emperor weapon. Furthermore, the power of this emperor weapon was actually so terrifying. Brother Zhuo, how many more secrets are you hiding? A bitter smile appeared on Mo Lingtian's lips. He realized that he really could not see through Zhuowen anymore. The young man with blood-red hair and blood-red eyes who stood proudly in the air was surrounded by layers of mist. Mo Lingtian had thought that he had seen through Zhuowen after removing a few layers of mist, but he realized that he was very wrong. The mist around the young man in front of him was endless, as if it would never fade away. Patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect, didn't you just say that I would have to pay with my life? Now I'm standing here and you took a few steps back. Is this the price you were talking about? Isn't this price a little too cheap? Zhuowen slowly walked towards the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect, but he didn't touch the slaughtering abstinence violation blade. The slaughtering abstinence violation blade was too strong. If Zhuowen wanted to suppress it, he would have to use his demonic eyes. However, the slaughtering abstinence violation blade was enough to deal with the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect. Zhuowen didn't need to use it. After all, the slaughtering abstinence violation blade belonged to the monk in red clothes. The monk was a high-level great emperor. He had killed great emperors before. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect was also a great emperor, but he was only a low-level one. Even though the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect knew how to use the Xiao Yarou sword, he wasn't strong enough to deal with the slaughtering abstinence violation blade. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect saw Zhuowen walking towards him, he started retreating. He was staring at the slaughtering abstinence violation blade with fear. He could sense that the slaughtering abstinence violation blade's qi was even more terrifying than his Xiao Yarou sword. Your great emperor's weapon isn't a low-level great emperor's weapon? Is it a medium-level great emperor's weapon? Asked the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect. Zhuowen was still walking slowly, but when he heard what the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect said, he was surprised. Great emperor's weapons were divided into different levels. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect's Xiao Yarou sword must be a low-level great emperor's weapon because the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect used to be a low-level great emperor's weapon. The slaughtering abstinence violation blade must be a high-level great emperor's weapon, thought Zhuowen. Zhuowen had already experienced how terrifying the blood-robed monk was. He was an 8th-level great emperor and his battle prowess was monstrous. He could kill 9th-level great emperors. His massacre abstinence violation blade could be considered a high-grade monarch weapon. Moreover, it was a top-grade monarch weapon. What? You don't want to admit it? I wouldn't have thought that a little bastard like you would have a great emperor's weapon. But it seems like you haven't mastered it yet, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect, smiling coldly. What are you trying to say? replied Zhuoan indifferently. Haha. What am I trying to say? So what if your weapon is a high-level Great Emperor's weapon? I'm the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect sealed his godly awareness in the Xiao Yarou sword to save the Xiao Yarou sect. Even if you have a medium-level monarch weapon, so what? You can't do anything to me. Lin Feng said, you can't do anything to me. A medium-level Great Emperor's weapon can't compete with a low-level Great Emperor's weapon. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect burst into laughter. He raised his right hand and pointed at the hilt of the Xiao Yarou sword. A beam of white light shot up to the sky from the Xiao Yarou sword. Boom, boom, boom. After this milky white light pillar finally rushed out, it immediately began to continuously condense. Finally, it condensed into a huge white figure that was a few thousand feet tall. This figure was wearing a long white robe and had a celestial demeanor. A faintly discernible aura involuntarily rose. Bzzz. The sound of a sword resonated in the air. Then, the Xiao Yarou sword started growing bigger and bigger. It turned into a gigantic sword, and the celestial being held it in his hand. Is that the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect? He summoned his godly awareness. It seems like the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect is determined to kill that little boy. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock as they stared at the huge, sage-like figure. They could feel the strength of the sage-like figure. At the same time, they recognized that it was the sect master's divine sense that was contained in the carefree sword. You're dead. The patriarch's godly awareness is terrifying. You've never experienced it before, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect proudly. He pointed at Zhuoan and gloated. He knew that after the patriarch's godly awareness, Zhuoan wouldn't be able to do anything. Even if he had a medium-level Great Emperor's weapon, it would be useless. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect could see that Zhuoan wasn't familiar with the slaughtering abstinence violation blade. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect was right. Zhuoan hadn't had the slaughtering abstinence violation blade for a long time, and the slaughtering abstinence violation blade was extremely dense. Even Zhuoan couldn't control it. Whoosh. Zhuoan looked indifferent. He raised his right hand and used his mental strength to control the slaughtering abstinence violation blade. He moved it towards the patriarch's godly awareness. Xiao Yarou Zizai. The patriarch's godly awareness smiled indifferently. Then, he shook the Xiao Yarou sword in his right hand. Suddenly, an invisible sword chi filled the air. It was as smooth as flowing water. Following which, Zhuowen was shocked to discover that when the formless swordlight spread out in front of him, they actually went berserk, revealing their hidden fangs, wanting to deal a fatal blow to Zhuowen. Slash. The slaughtering abstinence violation saber slashed out, and a violent chi of slaughter blossomed, forming a blood-red vortex. It swept up the sword light that suddenly went from soft to firm. Whoosh. The slaughtering oath-breaking blade was very violent. After releasing the sword light in front of it, it made a buzzing sound and directly rushed toward the phantom of the first-generation sect master. It wanted to split and destroy this huge phantom. Chapter 1059. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarou sect was dead. Zhuowen frowned as he looked at the slaughtering oath-breaking blade that had been sent flying. He was a little surprised that the sect master of this generation's divine sense was so powerful that it could unleash the terrifying power of the carefree sword. Zhuowen couldn't help but think about the godly awareness in the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. His back was covered with cold sweat. Back then, the monk hadn't released his godly awareness. Instead, he had used it to attack Zhuowen. Zhuowen knew that if the monk had released his godly awareness, Zhuowen would have been a dead man. After all, the slaughtering abstinence violation blade had been able to unleash such a powerful attack just by relying on the divine sense contained within the blade, causing Zhuowen to be exhausted and almost lose his life. If he had released his divine sense, Zhuowen would not have been able to withstand a single blow. But the godly awareness must have been taken away by Xiao He. I don't know if it was destroyed or not. Zhuowen frowned and murmured to himself. Bzzz. The slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade was much more powerful than the patriarch had expected. The slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade, which had been sent flying away, made a buzzing sound. Surprisingly, the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade didn't seem to be afraid of death at all. Terrifying murderous chi rose up in the air. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal colliding was unceasingly heard. The slaughtering Buddhist commandment blade collided with the Xiao Yarrow sword again and again. The sky above the Xiao Yarrow sect was filled with lightning and thunder. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect frowned. Even though the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade was at a disadvantage, the Xiao Yarrow sword wasn't able to defeat the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. Instead, they were in a stalemate. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect felt that something was wrong. Although he had never seen a mid-tier emperor weapon before, a mid-tier emperor weapon that couldn't unleash its full power shouldn't be a match for a low-tier emperor weapon that could unleash its full power. But now, the Xiao Yarrow sword couldn't defeat the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect was confused. Could a medium-level great emperor weapon really be that strong? The illusory shadow of the first sect master shouted and slashed out with the freedom sword in his hand. A huge crescent-shaped sword radiance gushed out from the crack in the void and slashed out toward the slaughtering oath-breaking saber. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing rang out. The crescent-shaped sword radiance arrived as expected and slammed heavily on the slaughtering oath-breaking blade. Then, the entire space seemed to have frozen. The slaughtering oath-breaking blade was sent flying, and the bloody aura on its surface began to dim. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect saw that, he looked extremely happy. All he had to do was break through Zhuo Wen's defense and he would definitely die. Take advantage of the victory and pursue. Kill! Shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect furiously. The patriarch nodded and jumped forwards. He appeared in front of the deadly Buddhist abstinence blade. He raised his Xiao Yarrow sword and crashed onto the deadly Buddhist abstinence blade's blade. Then, sparks appeared. Those sparks looked like stars in the sky. Whoosh! The slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade was sent flying away. The slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade became dimmer. It looked like it was going to disappear at any moment. Kill him! Shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect happily. He pointed at the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and shouted. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect listened to him and slashed down with his Xiao Yarrow sword. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect's godly awareness was set to obey the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. Therefore, he had to obey the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect unconditionally. That little boy is going to die. The carefree sword slashed down from the sky, and this scene was firmly imprinted in the eyes of everyone in the square. The power of this sword was very terrifying. Wherever it passed, the space collapsed inch by inch, like glass shattering. Even the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect, who was at the top of the celestial Zun realm, would die in front of that sword. Even though Zhuowen was strong, that sword was terrifying. Zhuowen couldn't resist that sword. However, Zhuo Wen's gaze remained calm. He raised his head slightly and stared at the unfettered sword that was getting closer and closer. The wild sword sound was like a myriad of thunderbolts, constantly ringing in his ears. Wild gales blew over and lifted Zhuo Wen's wild blood-red hair. It seems like I have to grab the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade to break the Xiao Yarrow sword's godly awareness. Zhuo Wen sighed softly. His face was expressionless. He waved his right hand, and the slaughtering abstinence violation blade that had been sent flying flew back to him. Zhuo Wen caught it in his hand. Boom! The moment Zhuo Wen grasped the slaughtering abstinence violation blade, the originally dim blade began to glow with a demonic light. Following that, a terrifying aura of slaughter surged into Zhuo Wen's body, flowing through his meridians in an attempt to assimilate his entire body. Demonic eye! Zhuo Wen groaned and summoned the demonic eye between his eyebrows. The black demonic eye blinked and swallowed a part of the slaughter chi that was eroding Zhuo Wen's body. It was within Zhuo Wen's tolerance. Die! With the slaughtering oath-breaking blade in hand, Zhuo Wen's temperament immediately changed. He became murderous, like a war-crazed demon god. The murderous aura from the slaughtering oath-breaking blade caused Zhuo Wen's aura to surge to the limit. Whoosh! The Xiao Yarrow sword was fast. It fell from the sky and arrived above Zhuowen's head in an instant. The milky white halo stretched across the sky and turned into a bridge. It was dazzling and magnificent. Zhuowen spat out a single word as he brandished the slaughtering abstinence violation blade in his hand. Immediately, boundless killing aura surged as a blood-colored blade shadow appeared in the void. Next, it heavily collided with the descending carefree sword. Dong! A sound that resembled the sound of a bronze bell rang out. Following which, the entire void trembled violently. The milky white halo and the berserk blood-red radiance divided the horizon into two regions, one red and one white. It was extremely dazzling. That guy. He blocked it. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect stood in the sky and stared at the white and red lights in the sky. He whispered to himself. Break. Zhuowen held the slaughtering abstinence violation blade in his right hand and slashed out again. At the same time, the demonic eye on his forehead blinked and surged with surging demonic energy. The slaughtering abstinence violation blade in his hand surged with an even more intense killing intent. In a flash, Zhuowen's blade changed drastically. In one breath, countless blade shadows appeared. Each one was more terrifying than the previous one. The seventh slash. When the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade reached the seventh slash, the milky white halo around the Xiao Yarrow sword disappeared. The eighth slash. The Xiao Yarrow sword started to move back. The patriarch's shadow was also pushed back by the red light. The ninth slash. With a furious roar, Zhuowen fiercely slashed out the ninth blade. The frenzied blade shadows formed a blood-colored vortex-light pillar that reached the sky. This terrifying blood-colored vortex-light pillar violently surged out and directly pierced through the illusory figure of the sect master. The latter was also heavily injured and began to become more and more illusory. The 10th slash. After the 10th slash, a huge saber shadow fell from the sky and crushed down. Instantly, the shadow of the sect master was turned into white powder by this saber shadow. BZZZ. The Xiao Yarrow sword shrieked and turned back into a 3-foot-long sword. It flew back into the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect's hand. He broke the patriarch's godly awareness. That great imperial weapon. How can it be so strong? The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect held the Xiao Yarrow sword and moved back a few dozen meters. He couldn't believe it. Zhuowen didn't say anything. He jumped again and condensed slaughter chi. In a flash, he arrived in front of the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. Bang! The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect raised his Xiao Yarrow sword to block the attack. Unfortunately, it was useless. The Xiao Yarrow sword was knocked away by the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect spat out blood and moved back. He stared at Zhuowen with fear in his eyes. Come. The moment the unfettered sword was sent flying, Zhuowen waved his right hand and the unfettered sword immediately flew into his hand. After carefully examining it for a while, he unceremoniously put it into his spirit ring. That's the ancestral weapon of the Xiao Yarrow sect. How dare you take it away, shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect furiously. The Xiao Yarrow sect is about to be destroyed. Why would you need an ancestral weapon? Said Zhuowen mockingly. He raised his murderous Buddhist abstinence blade high in the air. His terrifying murderous chi turned into a hurricane which surrounded the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect. The patriarch's escape route was blocked. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect's face was deathly pale, especially when he sensed the hurricane around him. He knew he had no way out now. What level is your Buddhist abstinence blade? Asked the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect, staring at the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. Zhuowen looked indifferent and said, "You're about to die, so there's no harm in telling you. This Buddhist abstinence blade is called the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. It's been used to kill 9th-layer great emperors." The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect's pupils shrank. He smiled wryly and said, "I see. It's a high-level great imperial weapon. No wonder it's so strong. I didn't lose in vain. So, you can die now." Then, he raised his deadly Buddhist abstinence blade and cut the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect's head in two. He couldn't be any more dead than that. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect had died. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect is dead. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect couldn't believe it. The patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect, who had been holding the Xiao Yarrow sword, couldn't escape death. It was all because of the young man with blood-red hair. The patriarch is dead. Let's run. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect died, the disciples of the Xiao Yarrow sect who were on the other side of the square threw away their weapons and ran away from the square. Chapter 1060. Encirclement. The sect master of the Xiao Yarrow sect was killed and the Xiao Yarrow sword was stolen. Everyone was stunned for a long time before they came back to their senses. They looked at each other and fell into silence. The Xiao Yarrow sect, which had stood in West Trench City for hundreds of years, had actually started to decline because of a young man. Even though they hadn't been uprooted, the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and the 5 celestial Zun elders had been killed. The Xiao Yarrow sect had lost its core members. Whoosh! Zhuowen landed in front of Mo Lingtian and the other 3. He ignored the exclamations of the surrounding people and asked solemnly, "Jianan, I heard you say that the young sect master of the Xiao Yarrow sect was not killed by the 3 of you?" Jianan nodded and said, "Brother Zhuo, we can swear that the death of the young sect master of the Xiao Yarrow sect has nothing to do with us. Yes. Back then, the young sect master coveted me and Sister Gatha's beauty and wanted to use force. However, he did not expect that the 3 of us were far stronger than the Xuanzuan realm. He suffered a little and was taught a lesson by us. After that, he left in embarrassment." Xian Xing added, "If it wasn't you who killed him, then who killed him? Moreover, he died after being taught a lesson by the 3 of you." Mo Lingtian frowned and said in a strange tone, "Framing." Zhuowen said indifferently, "Framing? Who would frame us? We just entered the academy not long ago. Why would someone frame us?" Jianan frowned and said. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. He said softly, "I'm afraid it's not because of you. It's because of me." The 4 of them were startled as a pondering expression appeared in their eyes. They were clearly aware of just how powerful Zhuowen was when he had entered the Jioshan Academy and had offended many people. It was still reasonable to say that Zhuowen had framed Jianan and the other 2. However, who was the mastermind behind this? This time, let's not go back together. We'll go separately. Zhuowen suddenly said to Mo Lingtian and the other 3. This. Mo Lingtian and the other 3 looked at each other and hesitated. "Don't worry. If the mastermind behind this is really because of me, I'm afraid that the purpose is to lure me out. It's really not worth it for you to take the risk with me. Moreover, you have all seen my strength just now, haven't you? So you don't have to worry too much." Zhuowen chuckled. Hearing this, Mo Lingtian and the other 3 nodded and said, "Brother Zhuo, be careful. I know you have a lot of tricks up your sleeve, but don't fight too hard. When it's time to retreat, retreat. Don't worry, I'm not someone who doesn't know when to back down. The 4 of you can leave first." Zhuowen smiled and nodded. "Good. Be careful." Mo Lingtian and the other 3 nodded again. With a step, they left the carefree square like a wisp of smoke and headed towards the outer courtyard. As he watched the 4 figures gradually disappear from his line of sight, Zhuowen's expression slowly darkened. With a step, Zhuowen suddenly leapt into the air. Just as he was about to break through the air, a binding force suddenly appeared above the carefree sect. "Oh!" Zhuowen's brows slightly furrowed. Under this binding force, his body suddenly froze in the air. Soon after, Zhuowen's cold eyes faintly swept across the mountain range where the carefree sect was located. It was as if he wanted to see through everything hidden within this pitch-black mountain range. A wisp of black light swept out from between Zhuowen's brows. Soon after, his entire body was covered in cold dragon scales. Zhuowen's eyes were replaced by a dark gold color. His gaze also became much sharper, as if he could see through everything. "Break for me!" Zhuowen angrily roared. His hands, which were covered in dragon scales, violently swung. Instantly, the binding force on his body crumbled under this powerful force. Soon after, Zhuowen attempted to break through the air again. Boom! After Zhuowen had flown dozens of meters, a thick golden barrier suddenly appeared, blocking Zhuowen's path. He heavily smashed against this barrier, causing Zhuowen to involuntarily retreat dozens of steps. His expression became extremely solemn. "Who is it?" Zhuowen simply stopped in the air and coldly shouted as he coldly swept his gaze across the enormous mountain range below. "Haha. Zhuowen, your reaction is really slow. We've been hiding in the mountain range for so long and you still haven't discovered us." A deep voice suddenly sounded out. Soon after, 6 figures flew over from the mountain range below. The one in the lead was wearing a long golden robe and his eyes were filled with arrogance. Emperor Jin, Emperor Feng, Emperor Lan, Emperor Qing, and, sweeping his gaze across the 4 people with terrifying auras, Zhuowen's gaze finally landed on the other 2 figures beside the 4 great Emperor Realm warriors. Blue Smoke and Grand Lily? Blue Smoke had a refined smile at the corner of his mouth. He cupped his hands towards Zhuowen in a rather hypocritical manner and said, "Brother Zhuo, it's been a long time since we last met. Blue Smoke also misses you." Zhuowen completely ignored Blue Smoke's hypocritical politeness. His gaze was fixed on Grand Lily as he said indifferently, "I didn't expect you to be involved." Hearing this, Grand Lily bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth. Her beautiful eyes stared at Zhuowen as she said, "You are really Zhuowen from the Qingxian Empire?" Zhuowen laughed, "What does that have to do with you?" Grand Lily's beautiful face froze. She gritted her teeth and said, "Emperor Qing has already told me that you are Zhuowen from the Qingxian Empire. Are you still not going to admit it? What does it have to do with you whether I admit it or not? Who are you to me?" Zhuowen's gaze turned cold. His fiancée in name Back then had already openly teamed up with Emperor Qing to harm him. Now, Zhuowen's heart was extremely cold. There were even traces of killing intent in his heart. "It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. The aura of the dragon soul on your body is not a lie. You are Zhuowen from the Qingxian Empire." Grand Lily's voice turned cold as she stared at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes. "Why? Today, you came with Emperor Qing and the rest to kill me?" Zhuowen said indifferently. "You killed my father. The enmity of killing my father is irreconcilable," Grand Lily said coldly. "Since that's the case, there's nothing more to say." After saying that, Zhuowen turned his attention back to Supreme Jin and said, "You were the ones who killed the unfettered sect's young master, right? You were also the ones who arranged for me to be framed, weren't you? Smart. Previously, you had played a cicada shedding its shell trick in front of the 4 of us. Did you think that we would let you off so easily? Jianan and the other 2 were your best friends. If we didn't attack them, why would you appear? However, you're quite alert. You actually allowed the 4 of them to leave first." Supreme Jin laughed icily. "Were Lan Yang and Grand Lily the ones who provided the information?" Zhuowen asked again. "You're not stupid. It was us." Grand Lily raised her head and stared coldly at Zhuowen. She knew very well that with 4 emperor-level powerhouses involved, Zhuowen would not be able to escape this time. "With the 4 of us here, don't even think about running away. Obediently hand over the unfettered sword and the other emperor weapon. At the same time, hand over your spiritual ring and I'll consider leaving your corpse intact." Supreme Jin spread out his right hand and said indifferently, "What if I don't hand it over?" Zhuowen asked with a sinister look in his eyes. "You don't want to hand it over? Then die." Supreme Jin's eyes curled into a dangerous arc. He then stomped his foot and a terrifying emperor-level aura surged out. 9 golden stars descended from the sky and turned into the star territory that was unique to emperor-level powerhouses. Whoosh! Supreme Jin stepped into the void and instantly appeared above Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He had wanted to kill this hateful brat for a long time. The Alcade Sacred Court's 3rd prince had all been killed by this brat. Their hatred had reached a point where they would not rest until one of them was dead. Furthermore, Zhuowen's fearless attitude had pissed Supreme Jin off for a long time. Therefore, as soon as Zhuowen finished speaking, he immediately attacked. Since this Zhuowen was not willing to hand it over, he could still snatch the 2 emperor weapons from him after killing him. The moment Supreme Jin made his move, the other 3 martial emperors did not make their move. Instead, They stood at the back and watched silently. Supreme Jin had the strongest cultivation base among the four of them. He was a third-level martial emperor. It would be a piece of cake for him to take care of Zhuo Wen. Blue Smoke and Grand Lily sneered. At this moment, they already regarded Zhuowen as a dead man. No matter how monstrous Zhuowen was, it was unlikely that he would be a match for a third heaven emperor. Rumble. As soon as the emperor's aura descended, Zhuowen felt his entire body being shrouded by a heavy pressure. It was as if his entire body was being crushed by countless mountains. Die. A huge golden palm surrounded by 9 stars came crashing down on Zhuowen, intending to completely suppress Zhuowen. Break. Zhuowen roared angrily. Suddenly, a dragon's roar erupted from his body. Then, a black dragon shadow emerged from his body and circled around him, instantly breaking the terrifying emperor's aura that enveloped his entire body. Dragon wings. Open. With a low roar, 3 pairs of huge dragon wings unfurled. Zhuowen's speed soared to the extreme and he disappeared from where he was standing. At the same time, the huge golden palm came crashing down from the sky and slammed into the void where Zhuowen had been. Terrifying golden light gushed out, annihilating the small space where Zhuowen had been. Countless cracks appeared in that small space. The power of an emperor-level powerhouse's attack was terrifying. Zhuowen, who had retreated a few hundred meters away, looked at the annihilated space and was shocked. Supreme Jin's power was truly terrifying. What a slippery little bastard. Let's see how many moves you can dodge. Supreme Jin's indifferent voice rang out from the void. Then, another huge golden palm came crashing down from the sky and landed on top of Zhuowen's head. Damn it! Zhuowen roared. With a stomp of his foot, he immediately dashed to the other side in an attempt to dodge Supreme Jin's attack. Little bastard. The prince of the Alcade Sacred Dynasty is not that easy to kill. Since you've killed him, you'll have to pay the price. Chapter 1061. Burial at Sea. You've killed my Blue Whale Holy Court's crown prince, Yun Zhongyang. Don't even think about leaving this place alive today. Just as Emperor Feng attacked, Emperor Lan appeared on the other side of Emperor Feng with the boundless power of the sea, blocking off Zhuowen's other escape route. Zhuowen, let's not talk about our grudges. You won't be able to escape today. Emperor Qing leisurely appeared behind Zhuowen with 9 green stars revolving around him. There was a mocking smile on his face. Boom. Just as Wind Emperor, Lan Emperor, and Qing Emperor blocked Zhuo Wen's 3 escape routes, Jin Emperor's attack also arrived in an instant. A golden palm, which was as large as a mountain, came crashing down on Zhuo Wen's head. The terrifying power caused Lan Yang and Grand Lily to shudder in fear. This Zhuo Wen is finished. Lan Yang's lips curled into a mocking smile as she chuckled. Grand Lily's beautiful eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Aside from that, there was also deep hatred. Zhuowen had killed her father, Grand Haohai. She would never forget the grudge of killing her father. However, what she didn't expect was that back then, it was their grand family who had pressured Zhuo Wen in every way possible. Moreover, that Grand Haohai had tried every possible means to kill Zhuo Wen. That Grand Haohai's death was merely a result of his own actions. Zhuo Wen's eyes darkened in the face of everyone's mocking gazes. When Emperor Jin's golden palm came crashing down, a jade-colored leaf appeared in Zhuo Wen's hand. He immediately crushed it and disappeared from the encirclement of the 4 Emperor Realm experts as though he had teleported. Boom. The golden palm once again missed its target. Supreme Jin's eyes narrowed while Supreme Emperor Qing and the other 2 revealed a look of astonishment. They never thought that Zhuo Wen would actually possess a treasure that could allow him to teleport. Bang! Zhuowen reappeared a few miles away from the 4 great emperors. There was an invisible barrier in front of him. Originally, he wanted to use the 9 Autumn's wind to teleport 1,000 miles away to escape the pursuit of the 4 great emperors. However, when he moved a few miles away, he was stopped by the invisible barrier in front of him, and Zhuowen was knocked dizzy. Haha. It's useless. We've already set up an inescapable net for you. This time, you won't be able to escape even if you grow wings. It's better for you to obediently stay here and accept your death. Supreme Jin laughed heartily. Golden light erupted from his body and he charged towards Zhuowen once again. The other 3 martial emperors were not to be outdone either. They followed behind Supreme Jin and their eyes were filled with mockery. This time, they had planned this for a long time. They had used Jianan, Gatha, Xian Xing, and Zhuowen's relationship with Zhuowen to lure him to West Path City. Their goal was to kill him. Ever since they had been toyed with by Zhuowen, the 4 great emperors had become much smarter. They had set up an inescapable net in advance in order to trap Zhuowen. Trying to escape in vain. What wishful thinking. Blue Smoke stood quietly on the other side and watched. The corners of his mouth were filled with a cold smile. Zhuowen's expression was ugly. He stomped his foot and dashed towards the other side. However, he was disappointed to see that an invisible barrier had appeared on the other side as well. In other words, Supreme Jin and the others had already set up a restrictive barrier in the surrounding dozens of miles. When Zhuowen arrived at this place, they had activated the restrictive barrier and completely trapped him. The 4 martial emperors, led by Supreme Jin, sneered as they stared at Zhuowen who was trying to escape. Their eyes were filled with mockery. With the restrictive barrier in place, they were not afraid of Zhuowen escaping. Hence, they were not in a hurry to kill Zhuowen. When he realized that the restrictive barrier had been set up all around him, Zhuowen's eyes darkened and he gave up on the idea of escaping. Why don't you continue to run? Why aren't you running away anymore? Supreme Jin slowly walked towards Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with mockery and iciness. Back then, Zhuowen had killed Zhuowen in front of him and had thoroughly angered him. Hence, he must kill Zhuowen. Zhuowen, today, you must die. Accept your fate. Supreme Jin arrived beside Supreme Jin and said indifferently. Supreme Jin and Supreme Foam walked silently behind them without saying a word. However, one could tell from the look in their eyes that they shared the same thoughts as Supreme Lan and Supreme Qing. Swoosh. Zhuowen did not say anything. He stomped his foot once again and instantly dashed towards the other side at an extremely fast speed. Are you still struggling? You really won't give up until all hope is gone. Supreme Jin's lips curled into a smile. He was not worried that Zhuowen would escape at all. Not good. This kid is heading towards Blue Smoke and Grand Lily. The smile on Emperor Lan's face had just blossomed when he heard Emperor Qing's shout. The smile on his face immediately froze. His eyes widened as he looked at Zhuowen. Sure enough, he realized that Zhuowen was heading in the direction where Lan Yang and Grant Lily were. Both of you, run! Emperor Lan roared angrily. With a stomp of his foot, he flew away in a hurry while Emperor Qing followed closely behind with a dark look in his eyes. Although Emperor Jin and Emperor Foam were a little surprised, they were not as anxious as Emperor Qing and Emperor Foam. After all, Blue Smoke and Grand Lily were not the geniuses of the Alcade Sacred Dynasty. Naturally, they did not care. Their main goal this time was to kill Zhuowen. Run! Blue Smoke and Grand Lily also noticed Zhuowen rushing towards them. Their expressions changed and they quickly retreated. They knew how strong Zhuowen was. Although Blue Smoke was at the peak of the Golden Exalt stage, he still did not dare to fight against Zhuowen. As for Grand Lily, he was only at the Supreme Being stage, let alone being a match for Zhuowen. Run! Can you run? Since you are the traitors, you will have to pay the price. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with killing intent. The 2 of them were the culprits who had attracted the attention of the 4 emperors. How could Zhuowen let them go? Zhuowen tapped his forehead with his right hand and took out the Supreme Dragon Cauldron. He raised his right hand and a dragon's roar was heard. The 81 dragon's aura that was contained in the Supreme Dragon Cauldron suddenly emerged and turned into a sea of dragons, blocking the escape route of Blue Smoke and Grand Lily. Looking at the terrifying dragon's aura in front of them, Blue Smoke and Grand Lily's faces turned pale. They could not help but tremble. They did not dare to face Zhuowen. After all, he had killed the patriarch of the Xiao Yarrow sect and he had an emperor weapon. They were no match for him. Don't kill us, or you will die miserably. Blue Smoke shouted and started to speak incoherently. Do you think if I don't kill you, my fate will change? That's ridiculous. Zhuowen smiled mockingly. He waved his right hand and the dragon's aura surrounded Blue Smoke and Grand Lily. Then, Zhuowen appeared in front of Blue Smoke and lifted him up. Release Blue Smoke. Release Grand Lily. The Blue Emperor and the Green Emperor roared at the same time. Their speed soared to the limit. Unfortunately, the two of them were originally some distance away from Zhuowen. Now, they could not reach Zhuowen immediately. Ridiculous. Zhuowen completely ignored the Blue Emperor and the Green Emperor who were roaring angrily. He grabbed Lan Yang's head with his sharp dragon claws and exerted force. No! Blue Smoke shouted. The sound of bones breaking resounded in the air. Blue Smoke lost his life. It's your turn. Grand Lily. After killing Lan Yang, Zhuowen's gaze landed on Grand Lily. There was not a trace of emotion in his voice. Don't kill me. I used to be your fiancé. How can you kill me? Grand Lily's eyes were filled with fear as she screamed. You have been divorced by me. You have nothing to do with me anymore. Originally, we could have stayed out of each other's business. Unfortunately, you chose to go against me. Don't blame me for being merciless. Zhuowen didn't waste his breath any longer. His right palm abruptly blasted out as a strand of origin energy gushed out and blasted onto Grant Lily's forehead. The extremely invasive origin energy surged into Grant Lily's body, causing Grant Lily's eyes to open wide as her vitality was severed. Before she died, Grand Lily's eyes were filled with regret. It had been so long. Why did she continue to be entangled with Zhuowen? She had already successfully entered the outer court of the Garcia Divine Academy. If she worked hard in her cultivation in the future, her achievements would definitely not be weak. At that time, she would be able to return to the Qing Xian Empire and revitalize the Grand Family. But now, because of the hatred in her heart, she had completely lost her life. Boom. After killing Grand Lily and Lan Yang, Azure Emperor and Azure Emperor's attacks arrived as scheduled. Their attacks, which exuded Emperor's might, crushed down like the heavens. Exterminating Oath-Breaking Blade. Zhuowen shouted. A blood-red Oath-Breaking Blade appeared in his hand. He swung it behind him and a blood-red killing aura surged out. It slashed against the attacks of the two Emperor Realm experts. Buzz. The exterminating Oath-Breaking Blade only lasted for a moment before it was sent flying by the terrifying attack. The surface of the exterminating Oath-Breaking Blade dimmed a little, and the murderous aura that was surging out of it was also slowly withdrawn. Puff. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. He raised his right hand and caught the exterminating Oath-Breaking Blade. He retreated 100 steps and stared at Emperor Lan and Emperor Qing who were not far away. You're courting death. I'm going to kill you. Looking at Blue Smoke who was already dead, Emperor Lan was enraged. The only monstrous genius of their Blue Whale Holy Dynasty had died in the hands of Zhuowen. Emperor Lan had almost lost his mind. Whoosh. Without saying a word, Emperor Lan rushed in front of Zhuowen again. Waves of terrifying blue oceanic energy surged out. In an instant, monstrous tsunamis surged in the surroundings. Wave after wave rushed towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen's entire body was surrounded by countless tsunamis. He slashed out again and again. Although each slash could split apart a tsunami, the tsunamis around him seemed to be endless. Every time one was destroyed, another would be born. It was extremely frightening and terrifying. Futile struggle. Burial at sea. Chapter 1062. Dragon Zhuowen groaned and retreated several dozen steps. His face turned a little pale as he looked at the giant wave that was nearly 100 feet tall. The burial at sea that the Blue Emperor had used was extremely terrifying. He had probably used his full strength in an attempt to kill Zhuowen. Kid. Absorb all 81 strands of dragon might from the Supreme Dragon Cauldron. Xiao Hei's voice finally rang out at this moment. His voice was filled with seriousness. Absorb the dragon might? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. However, he did not doubt Xiao Hei's words. Back then, it was Xiao Hei who had asked him to absorb the dragon might from the dragon vein into the Supreme Dragon Cauldron to nurture it. Moreover, the effects of the Supreme Dragon Cauldron were pretty good. After half a year of nurturing, the dragon might was much more powerful than before. Absorb. Zhuowen cried out as he thought of this. The 81 strands of dragon might around him were all absorbed into his body under his control. For a time, dragon roars continuously rang out from within Zhuowen's body. Lift the dragon scale on your right claw and take out a drop of dragon blood, Xiao He said again. Zhuowen was taken aback. Soon after, he nodded and did as he was told. He lifted the dragon scale on his right claw and a drop of dark golden dragon blood flowed out. With my dragon blood, the dragon might of the azure dragon, condense the dragon domain, a solemn voice rang out in Zhuowen's heart. Zhuowen could not help but recite it as well. Immediately, dragon silhouettes that were roaring towards the sky surged out around him. These dragon silhouettes were bound by black chains. One end of the chains was tied to the dragon silhouettes, while the other end was tied to Zhuowen's body. It was as if Zhuowen was controlling these terrifyingly powerful giant dragons with the chains alone. It was extremely terrifying, as if he was controlling 10,000 dragons by himself. Dragon domain. Did Xiao He ask me to nurture the 81 strands of dragon might in order to condense this strange dragon might? Zhuowen's eyes revealed a hint of contemplation. However, the 100 feet tall wave that descended from the sky did not give Zhuowen any time to think. In an instant, Zhuowen's entire body was enveloped by it. What terrifying energy from the sea! At this moment, Zhuowen was in the middle of the vast sea. There was an immense pressure in the deep sea. Zhuowen. Of Zhuowen's body. Fortunately, the dragon domain condensed from the dragon's blood and power just now protected Zhuowen firmly in the center, barely holding on in this deep-sea environment. It's a pity that your dragon might has only been nurtured for a short period of time, so the dragon domain you can condense isn't very firm. Xiao He's voice rang out again, and there was a trace of pity in his voice. What exactly is this dragon domain? Zhuowen suddenly asked. It's a secret technique of the dragon clan. It's a powerful defense condensed from the dragon blood and dragon might. However, it doesn't have any offensive capabilities. Xiao He continued. It only has defensive capabilities. Zhuowen nodded. He was a little disappointed. He could only defend passively in the burial at sea. However, he would definitely lose if he continued to defend. After all, this was not a long-term solution. It seems that I can only use the slaughter oath-breaking blade to forcefully break through the surrounding burial at sea. Zhuowen muttered to himself. He held the slaughter oath-breaking blade in his hand and slashed out. The slaughter aura gathered into an endless blood pillar that soared into the sky. Suddenly, the originally calm deep sea started to ripple. Boom! A thunder-like explosion resounded. The blood pillar that soared into the sky suddenly broke through the surrounding pressure and soared into the sky. It formed a cylindrical passage in the deep sea. Zhuowen took a step forward and followed the cylindrical passage. Then, he flew straight up. Whoosh! Seawater splashed everywhere. Zhuowen suddenly broke out of the water. He was surrounded by countless dragon shadows, as if he was the messenger of 10,000 dragons. He broke through? Lan Di narrowed his eyes. He was a little surprised that Zhuowen had broken through his attack. So what if I broke through? Take another blow from me. Lan Di shouted softly and rushed out again. He appeared in front of Zhuowen as if he had teleported. Yuanli spat out from his right palm, which contained the power of the sea. He blasted out a palm that was like a tsunami. Boom! However, Emperor Lan's palm was blocked by the dragon phantoms around Zhuowen. Emperor Lan was surprised to find that his palm was stuck in a swamp. Under the dragon phantom's obstruction, he couldn't move an inch forward. What's up with these dragon shadows around this kid? Why is his defense so strong? Lan Di's pupils shrank. He could not help but mutter to himself. Slash. At the same time, Zhuowen's right hand, which was holding the slaughter oath-breaking blade, slashed down. He wanted to kill Lan Di completely. Although this emperor weapon is strong, it's a pity that you can't unleash any of its power. What a waste. Lan Di snorted coldly. He shook his sleeve and waves of blue ocean energy burst out. They formed a pillar of water that shot into the sky and blocked the slaughter oath-breaking blade. Thud thud thud. Zhuowen's pupils shrank under this power. He was forced to retreat dozens of steps. The blood in his body boiled and he almost could not suppress it. What are the three of you standing there for? Let's attack together. The dragon shadows around this kid are very strong. Let's work together to break through. The treasures on this kid's body will be divided equally among the four of us. After defeating Zhuo Wen, Supreme Emperor Lan immediately yelled at Supreme Emperor Qing, Supreme Emperor Jin, and Supreme Emperor Feng behind him. He wanted to join forces with the three of them to attack Zhuo Wen together. Lan Di is right. This kid has many trump cards. We should attack together and end this quickly. Qing Di and the other two nodded and came to Lan Di's side. Qing Di chuckled and said, "The three of you. Feng Di and I have reserved the blood oath-breaking blade in this kid's hand. As for the other treasures, the two of you can split them equally." Lan Di and Qing Di cursed in their hearts. However, they did not dare to refute. Qing Di was the strongest among the four and he was a third-level great emperor. His words held the most weight among the four of them. Moreover, Feng Di was on his side. The two of them did not dare to go against Qing Di. Since the treasures have been divided, let's kill this kid. As soon as Emperor Jin said this, he took the lead and charged forward. The 9 golden stars on his body turned into a starry domain which was extremely dazzling. Emperor Qing, Emperor Feng, and Emperor Lan also unleashed their own starry domains as destructive stars circled around their bodies. Die, die, die. The four of them surrounded Zhuo and attacked with their palms. The power of the stars and the terrifying Emperor's aura filled the entire space. The pitch-black sky seemed to be dyed with many colors. When the 4 great emperors released their 9 stars, there were a total of 36 huge stars. The dazzling starlight illuminated the entire Carefree Sect mountain range and West Path City. Those are Emperor stars? There are a total of 36 Emperor stars. Are 4 great emperors coming to West Path City? Finally, the attacks of the 4 Emperor Realm experts had completely drawn the attention of the cultivators in West Path City. When all the cultivators noticed the 36 stars that floated in the sky, their gazes revealed shock. The strongest person in West Path City was the Carefree Sect Master, who was a peak heavenly venerable. Other than the first Carefree Sect Master, there had not been an Emperor Realm cultivator in West Path City for hundreds of years. However, 4 great emperors had appeared in the sky above West Path City. For the cultivators in West Path City who had not seen great emperors for hundreds of years, it was an unprecedented visual impact. Look, the 4 great emperors are teaming up to attack one person. Who is that person? Why do 4 great emperors have to team up to capture him? When the 36 emperor stars rose in the sky above West Path City, the crowd quickly noticed the figure surrounded by the 4 great emperors. The figure was shrouded in countless dragon shadows. It was hazy and they could not see his true face. Boom! Boom! The attacks of the 4 Emperor Realm experts continued to pour out, bombarding the dragon domain continuously. Terrifying explosions spread out. This was the power of the Emperor Realm. The result of each of their attacks was not something an ordinary person could withstand. Zhuo groaned as blood began to flow from the corner of his mouth. The dragon domain around him began to tremble and tremble. Deng! 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 Zhuo retreated again and again. His face was extremely pale. Zhuo finally understood how terrifying the attacks of the 4 great emperors were. If it were not for the support of the dragon domain, Zhuo would be a dead man. The dragon domain can't hold on for much longer. What should I do? Zhuo was burning with anxiety as he muttered to himself. Crack! In 5 breaths' time, the surrounding dragon shadows began to wail and cracks appeared on the surface. Zhuo's blood began to flow more and more from his mouth. The blood in his body churned like a tsunami. Bang! In the end, the dragon domain completely collapsed. A heavenly attack passed through the shattered dragon shadows and smashed towards Zhuo. Sun fire! Boundless fire of the sun gushed out and surrounded Zhuo, forming an impenetrable wall of fire. Crack! Unfortunately, although the sunfire was strong, the attacks of the 4 great emperors were too terrifying. As soon as they came into contact with the wall of fire, The wall of fire was completely destroyed and continued to surge towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen kept retreating. His right hand gripped the exterminating Buddhist commandment blade and slashed down from above his head, slamming heavily on the incoming attack. Bang! 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 Continuous explosions rang out. Then, Zhuowen felt a sharp pain in the web between his thumb and index finger. Blood flowed out of his mouth as he spat out another mouthful of blood and flew backwards. Die! The 4 martial emperors arrived abruptly. They exchanged a glance and launched another terrifying attack. 4 attacks surged out like 4 roaming dragons, rushing towards Zhuowen from all directions. They wanted to blast him into smithereens. Damn it! You're really troublesome. Looks like I'll have to use such a good thing again. Chapter 1063. Massacre Destruction. Bang bang bang. The 4 martial emperors' attacks came crashing down. However, the murderous aura from the massacre abstinence violation blade had already wrapped around Zhuowen. Hence, the 4 attacks were all blocked by the murderous aura. Oh! What's going on? That emperor weapon is emitting such a terrifying murderous aura. Supreme Jin and the other 3 frowned when they saw this. They came to a halt and stared at Zhuowen, who was wrapped in murderous aura, in astonishment. Let's blast this murderous aura apart. I don't care what tricks he has up his sleeves. Can't we break it apart if we join forces? Supreme Jin coldly snorted. He then took a step forward and immediately charged towards the gathering murderous aura. The other 3 nodded and followed behind Supreme Jin. The power in their bodies rose to the maximum as they prepared to kill Zhuowen at any time. The 4 of them arrived at the core of the murderous aura. At this moment, the blood-colored murderous aura surged and gathered, forming a blood-colored vortex. Zhuowen's figure was faintly discernible within the vortex. Blast open the murderous aura and kill this little bastard. Supreme Jin instructed before he made the first move. He reached out with his right hand and the 9 golden orbs immediately surged with violent star energy and gathered in the center of his palm. The blazing golden light made it seem as if a small golden sun was being nurtured in his palm. The other 3 also mobilized their star energy, intending to use their full strength to break open the blood-colored vortex and kill Zhuowen, who was hidden within. Boom boom boom. 4 rays of star energy blasted out and a heavenly might filled the air. However, the 4 of them frowned because their attacks felt as if they had fallen into a swamp and could not break through at all. At this moment, Zhuowen, who was deep within the blood-colored vortex, slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was filled with confusion because all he could see was the color of blood. Where am I? Zhuowen instinctively asked. Kid. I let go of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. This dragon lord has already gone all out. I completely released the spiritual sense of the scarlet-clad monk that I collected last time. Since these 4 fellows are still haunting you, I might as well teach them a lesson they will remember well. Xiao He came before Zhuowen and said with a gloomy expression. This monk was a high-level martial emperor. Even if it was just a strand of his divine sense, it was still as vast as the ocean. It would be of great benefit to Xiao He. Initially, Xiao He had planned to slowly absorb this divine sense. Unfortunately, her plan could not keep up with the changes. Supreme Jin and the others were like sticky candy as they pestered Zhuowen relentlessly, determined to kill him. Xiao He could not possibly let Zhuowen die, so she had no choice but to use the power of the blood-red monk's divine sense. Didn't you say that you had erased the divine thoughts of the monk in bloody garments? I didn't expect you to collect them yourself. Zhuowen was stunned and then snorted coldly. Xiao He smiled awkwardly and said, the power of this monk's divine sense is not small. It is a great supplement for this dragon lord. Unfortunately, I have no choice but to use it now. Kid, quickly let go of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. The divine sense of the monk in bloody garments is about to appear. This is the divine sense of a high-level martial emperor. The power it can unleash is extremely terrifying. Zhuowen nodded and gently let go of his right hand. Instantly, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber buzzed and shot out from the center of the blood-colored vortex. The four people who were watching from outside the blood-colored vortex suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. Soon after, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber broke through the vortex and slashed towards Emperor Feng. Emperor Feng was the weakest among the four. His cultivation was only at the first level of the martial emperor realm. "How dare you attack me? You're courting death." Looking at the blood-colored abstinence violation saber, Emperor Feng was not afraid. Instead, his eyes were filled with greed. Previously, the power of the blood-colored abstinence violation saber was very weak. Therefore, Emperor Feng was not afraid of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. Wind. Emperor Feng roared and his hands began to gather a frenzied hurricane. The 9 stars above his head were formed by an extremely powerful hurricane and contained traces of the law of wind. Swoosh. The slaughtering abstinence violation saber turned into a demonic crimson light. Although it was still a few hundred meters away, it arrived in front of Emperor Feng in the blink of an eye. Emperor Feng was still gathering the power of wind slowly and he did not expect danger to approach him. When the slaughtering abstinence violation saber arrived in front of him, Emperor Feng realized that something was amiss. He raised his head and saw the slaughtering abstinence violation saber in front of him. What's going on? Why is the speed of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber so fast? Emperor Feng's eyes narrowed and he roared. He raised his hands and the incomplete power of wind surged out in an attempt to block the saber. However, there was not the slightest hint of anxiety in Emperor Feng's eyes. He was well aware of the power of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. It would be difficult for it to hurt him. Therefore, he was not very concerned about the attack from the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. Crack. However, when the slaughtering abstinence violation saber arrived in front of the power of wind could not withstand a single blow and was instantly broken. Then, the crimson light transformed and pierced through Emperor Feng's forehead. Swoosh. A stream of blood spurted out. Emperor Feng's eyes were wide open in anger as he looked up at the sky. Blood flowed out from his forehead like a broken dam. How is this possible? Why has the power of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber increased so much? I can't accept this. Emperor Feng roared and his physical body finally collapsed. Immediately, the nascent soul in his dantian rushed out of his physical body and headed towards Emperor Jin. "Emperor Jin, save me!" Emperor Feng's terrified voice rang out. Unfortunately, Emperor Feng's nascent soul did not rush out for long. Another crimson light flashed past and pierced through his nascent soul. Crimson energy filled the air and Emperor Feng's nascent soul immediately collapsed and dissipated. Everything happened too quickly. From the collapse of Emperor Feng's physical body to the destruction of his nascent soul, it all happened in an instant. Emperor Feng, a first heaven emperor, had fallen just like that. Emperor Feng is dead. Before Emperor Jin, Emperor Lan, and Emperor Qing could regain their senses, they saw Emperor Feng's nascent soul completely dissipate in front of their eyes. A martial emperor had fallen just like that in front of them. Whoosh! After killing Emperor Feng's nascent soul, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber turned into a crimson light and returned to the crimson vortex. At this moment, Zhuoan had already walked out of the crimson vortex. The crimson vortex began to churn and eventually formed a human figure. It was a monk dressed in crimson robes. His eyes were as deep as the sea and carried a trace of indifference towards the world. The Buddha is the heart and the heart is the Buddha. The heart and the Buddha are objects. If one knows that there are no objects and no heart, then one is a true Dharmakaya Buddha. The monk in crimson robes spat out a faint Buddhist proverb. Soon after, the corners of the monk's lips slowly curled into a demonic smile. He gently reached out with his right hand and grabbed the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. All things in the world are massacres. If there is no end to all things, there will be no end to massacres. If you want to stop massacres, the only way is to kill all things. To become a Buddha, one must kill. As soon as he spoke, the monk in crimson robes glanced indifferently at Zhuoan behind him. He then turned his gaze towards Emperor Jin and the other two in front of him. The murderous aura on his body grew denser and denser. The divine consciousness of an emperor weapon? This kid actually has the divine consciousness of an emperor weapon on him. Damn it. The expressions of Emperor Jin and the other two changed when they saw the monk in crimson robes formed from the murderous aura. They knew that Zhuowen's crimson abstinence violation saber was a high-level emperor weapon. In other words, the monk in crimson robes should have been a high-level emperor when he was alive. Although it was only a trace of divine consciousness, it was extremely terrifying when paired with a high-level emperor weapon. Initially, Emperor Jin and the others thought that Zhuowen had obtained the crimson abstinence violation saber by chance. They thought that it was impossible for it to possess the divine consciousness of its previous owner. However, they were wrong. Very wrong. A emperor has fallen. Isn't this a little too crazy? After Emperor Feng was killed by the slaughtering abstinence violation saber, the 9 stars that represented Emperor Feng fell from the sky and crashed heavily into the wilderness hundreds of miles away from Westpath City. And the fall of a star naturally represented the fall of an Emperor Realm expert. Many of the martial artists in West Slope City were still aware of this. Therefore, when the Wind Emperor fell, West Slope City began to fall into chaos. Kill. The divine consciousness of the monk in crimson robes was released by Xiao He. Therefore, he naturally obeyed Xiao He's orders. He took a step forward and charged towards Emperor Jin and the other two, intending to fight the 3 of them alone. What should we do, Emperor Jin? This divine consciousness is not easy to deal with. Emperor Qing and Emperor Lan stood behind Emperor Jin and said in a low voice, "Fight. We must kill that little bastard Zhuowen today. Although this monk was a high-level emperor when he was alive, he is only a trace of divine consciousness now. The 3 of us have nothing to fear at all. Let's kill him together." Emperor Jin snorted coldly. Emperor Lan nodded. He had the same intention. He did not want to let Zhuowen go either. Emperor Qing's eyes flickered. Emperor Qing was much calmer than Emperor Jin and Emperor Lan. He felt that the monk in crimson robes was not ordinary and was already on his guard. Kill. Supreme Jin roared angrily and took the lead to charge forward. Supreme Lan followed closely behind him while Supreme Qing quietly retreated and did not charge forward. Killing is the only way to prove one's Tao. All of you will be my stepping stones. The blood-robed monk mumbled to himself. Soon after, he slashed out with his exterminating oath-breaking blade. 1,000-foot-long blade light stretched across the void like a heavenly pillar that pierced through the heavens and earth as it shot towards Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan. Emperor Jin and Emperor Lan's expressions changed drastically. They quickly used their strongest moves in an attempt to block the 1,000-foot-long blade light. Boom, boom, boom. The 18 stars around them turned into a Milky Way realm, protecting them firmly in the center. For a moment, they managed to block the terrifying blood-red blade light. Killing is breaking the Buddhist precepts. Breaking the Buddhist precepts is enlightenment. Destruction of life. The monk in crimson robes mumbled again. He gently raised the blade in his hand. Instantly, bloody scenes appeared in the void. These bloody scenes were scenes of slaughter. Some of them were beasts, some of them were people, some of them were soul beasts. The various forms of slaughter in the world were fully interpreted by this blade. The murderous oath-breaking blade was to kill all living things and destroy all obstacles. Bang, bang, bang. Supreme Jin and Supreme Emperor Lan's celestial river domain crumbled the moment the annihilation technique was unleashed. The 2 Emperor Realm powerhouses did not even have the chance to grunt before they exploded into 2 clouds of blood mist. Let's go. Chapter 1064. Seclusion so powerful. Zhuowen's jaw dropped as he watched Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan explode into a mist of blood. His eyes were filled with shock. Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan were both level 3 martial emperors. 2 martial emperors had fallen just like that. This is a high-level martial emperor's move. Furthermore, it was executed with the help of the monk's divine sense. Naturally, its power is extraordinary. Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan are only low-level martial emperors. It's normal for them to not be a match for him. Xiao He stood on Zhuowen's shoulder, a look of pity in her eyes as she said, "Divine sense can only be used once. After this, The divine sense will disappear. What a pity. Zhuo Wen nodded. Xiao He was right. The divine sense of an emperor could only be released once. After that, it would dissipate. It was similar to the divine sense of the first-generation sect leader of the Xiao Yarrow sword sect. When the time came, it would dissipate. That Azure Emperor is really fast at escaping. He didn't even try to catch up. He just escaped. Zhuo Wen muttered to himself with some pity. What's a pity? With your talent, you'll be able to catch up to Supreme Emperor Qing after staying in the Divine Academy for a while. When that time comes, you can return to the Qing Xian Empire and kill Supreme Emperor Qing with your own hands. Xiao He said. I was lucky this time. If not for the monk's divine sense, I wouldn't have been able to escape so easily. Zhuo Wen's eyes darkened. He had miscalculated this time. Xiao He nodded. You're still too weak. You should go into seclusion when you return. You have many good things with you. You should be able to exchange them for enough contribution points. When the time comes, you'll cultivate in the cultivation pagoda for a while. Your strength should slowly increase. Even if something like this happens again, you won't be in such a sorry state like today. Hearing this, the corners of Zhuo Wen's mouth revealed a trace of a bitter smile. Xiao He was right. His current strength was indeed too weak. He had to make the best use of his time to improve his cultivation. Moreover, he had obtained many good things this time. After all, Zhuowen had obtained Supreme Jin, Supreme Lan, and Supreme Feng's spiritual rings. When the time comes, he could exchange them for enough contribution points for him to cultivate in the cultivation pagoda. However, although there were many good things in the three martial emperor's spiritual rings, there were no martial emperor weapons. It seemed like not every martial emperor realm martial artist could have martial emperor weapons. Let's go. When I return this time, I will immediately go into seclusion. If my cultivation does not reach the Empyrean realm, I will not come out. Zhuo Wen muttered in a low voice as a sharp glint appeared in his eyes. Zhuo Wen knew very well that if his cultivation could reach the heavenly venerate realm, his battle prowess would definitely be terrifying. At the very least, it would far surpass some of the ordinary heavenly venerates in the outer court. Whoosh! Thinking of this, Zhuowen took a step forward and turned into a stream of light as he left West Path City. Many martial artists in West Path City were still in shock. 4 martial emperors had joined forces to attack a mysterious martial artist. In the end, 3 of them had died and 1 had escaped. This result was enough to make any martial artists in West Path City dumbfounded. Who is this person? After the shock, a trace of doubt rose in the minds of all the martial artists in West Path City. Who was this mysterious young man? Some sharp-eyed martial artists recognized that Zhuowen was the young man who had killed the sect master of the Xiao Yarrow sect. Although many martial artists in West Path City had witnessed the battle between the sect master of the Xiao Yarrow sect and Zhuowen with their own eyes, no one knew the name Zhuowen. This young man had appeared in West Path City inexplicably. After that, he had caused a commotion and left without leaving a trace. Later on, the original legends about the sect master of the Xiao Yarrow sect in West Path City were replaced by this mysterious young man. Many martial artists in West Path City no longer talked about the sect master of the Xiao Yarrow sect in their free time, but the mysterious young man who had killed the sect master of the Xiao Yarrow sect and caused the deaths of 3 martial emperors. The rumors about the mysterious young man eventually spread in West Path City. In the end, everyone spread false rumors and deified the mysterious young man. Of course, this was all in the future. Whoosh! There was the sound of something breaking through the air. Zhuowen had returned to the outer courtyard of the main city. Mo Lingtian, Jianan, and the other 2 were waiting at the entrance of the academy. When they saw Zhuowen had returned, the 4 of them relaxed. When Zhuowen had asked them to leave first, they felt that something was wrong. There might be some hidden danger in West Path City. Therefore, the 4 of them were worried about Zhuowen's safety. However, now that Zhuowen had returned safely, the 4 of them were completely relieved. Brother Zhuo, did you encounter any trouble on your way back? Mo Lingtian greeted him with a smile. No trouble at all. Zhuowen smiled. He did not plan to tell anyone about what had happened with Supreme Jin and the other three. Although he had a good relationship with Mo Lingtian and the other three, things would become very troublesome if they found out that the blood-red Buddhist commandment blade in Zhuowen's possession was capable of killing Emperor-level experts. If news of this were to spread, no one knew who would covet his blood-red Buddhist commandment blade. Therefore, Zhuowen chose to avoid talking about it. After all, the massacre commandment blade was a high-tier emperor weapon. If news of it were to spread, it would only be disadvantageous to him. Mo Lingtian and the other three nodded. They did not doubt Zhuowen's words. Brother Zhuo, I want to increase my strength. I want to become a true expert. Jianan suddenly arrived in front of Zhuowen and said with a serious look in her eyes. Jianan, you mean? Zhuowen was stunned and asked. My sister and I are preparing to go into closed-door cultivation. We will only come out of closed-door cultivation when our cultivation levels have reached the refined state. Therefore, we may not appear for a very long time. Jianan suddenly said. Gatha also came to his side with a determined look in her eyes. After the incident at the Carefree sect, Jianan and Gatha deeply felt that they were not powerful enough. This time, they were determined to go into closed-door cultivation. Zhuowen nodded. Jianan and Gatha were very talented. In fact, in a sense, they were even more powerful than Zhuowen. After all, they were still very young. If they were given time to settle down, their cultivation levels would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. All right, when you come out of closed-door cultivation, remember to contact me through the communication jade talisman. That way, I will know that you're done with your closed-door cultivation. Zhuowen nodded and smiled. Of course. Jianan nodded heavily. Oh. These are the channel opening pills that I obtained from this mission. They are quite beneficial to the tempering of one's meridians. There are 4 of them here. The 4 of you can take them. Zhuowen suddenly thought of something. With a flick of his right hand, he took out a brocade box and took out 4 jade-colored pills. He handed them to Mo Lingtian, Jianan, and the other 2. Channel opening pills. Jianan, Mo Lingtian, and the other 2's eyes lit up. They looked at the jade-colored pills in their palms excitedly as they mumbled to themselves. Big brother Zhuo, many thanks. We won't waste time on pleasantries. We will remember your feelings for us in our hearts. We also plan to go into closed-door cultivation this time. We will take our leave now. Jianan nodded heavily at Zhuowen. Soon after, he led Gatha and Xian Xing towards the academy. Brother Mo, what about you? Zhuowen turned his head and looked at Mo Lingtian with a smile. I plan to do some missions and earn some contribution points. After that, I will enter the cultivation tower to cultivate for a period of time. I am too weak. Compared to you, I am nothing. Mo Lingtian said with a bitter smile. Originally, his cultivation was much higher than Zhuowen's. However, he was now at the initial stage of the Golden Exalted stage, while Zhuowen was also at the initial stage of the Golden Exalted stage. The latter had surpassed him in cultivation in such a short period of time. This made him feel even more pressured. In addition to Zhuowen's terrifying battle strength, Mo Lingtian could only smile bitterly in his heart. However, at the same time, it also inspired him to become stronger. After all, the pressure that Zhuowen gave him could also be used as motivation. Zhuowen nodded. After the incident at the Unfettered sect, Mo Lingtian, Jianan, and the others realized that they were not strong enough. Zhuowen was also the same. Especially after being surrounded by Supreme Jin and the other 3, Zhuowen could not wait to increase his strength. Let's work hard together. I also plan to go into closed-door cultivation for a period of time. I hope that I can use this time to break through to the heavenly exalted stage. Zhuowen said with a faint smile. The 2 of them chatted for a while more before they went their separate ways. After all, everyone had their own cultivation methods and it was impossible to unify them. Therefore, they naturally cultivated separately. After returning to the academy, Zhuowen went to the 2nd level of the mission point. This time, he did not go there to accept missions. Instead, he wanted to exchange them for contribution points. Currently, he had the spiritual rings of Supreme Jin, supreme lan, and supreme foam. There were many precious spiritual treasures, armor skills and other miscellaneous items in them. If he exchanged these items for contribution points, it would be a considerable amount of wealth. It would be enough for Zhuowen to cultivate in the cultivation pagoda for a long time. When Zhuowen brought the spiritual rings of the three supreme emperors to Bei Xian to exchange them for contribution points, Bei Xian was completely shocked. This was because all the items that Zhuowen brought were worth more than 1 million contribution points. Zhuo Xiaoyu, you've struck it rich. You actually managed to get so many good items. Could it be that you've robbed an Emperor Realm expert? Bei Xian looked at Zhuowen strangely. After all, the items that Zhuowen brought out were beyond his expectations. This was not something that a mere golden exalted could take out. That was why Bei Xian said that. Zhuowen rubbed his nose and laughed awkwardly. Senior Bei Xian, you're overthinking it. With my strength, how could I rob an Supreme Emperor? These items were obtained by chance. It's not worth mentioning. Hearing this, Bei Xian pulled out his face. These items were worth more than 1 million contribution points. However, Zhuowen said that they were not worth mentioning. He wanted to give Zhuowen a slap. However, Zhuowen's words were obviously perfunctory. Bei Xian knew that Zhuowen did not want to talk about the origins of these items. Therefore, Bei Xian was smart enough not to ask. After all, everyone had their own secrets. This was a personal matter and it was not good to ask about it. After obtaining more than 1 million contribution points, Zhuowen exchanged them for some arcane secret manuals and materials. Then, he left the second level under Bei Xian's strange gaze. Chapter 1065. General trend of massacre. The flow of people in the cultivation tower was still quite terrifying. Zhuowen arrived in front of the counter of the Cheongsam lady from before. The latter also recognized Zhuowen and a trace of caution appeared in her beautiful eyes. At the same time, she was constantly sneaking glances at Zhuowen. During this period of time, Zhuowen's deeds could be considered to have truly spread in the outer court. As a new student, he snatched the contribution points of the older students. Later on, he even fought with the famous genius of the Emperor Pavilion, Liu Xiong, and defeated the latter. It could be said to have caused a sensation for a period of time. It was even rumored that Zhuowen was hailed as the strongest new student in the history of the outer court. It was very likely that he would squeeze into the outer court heavenly sovereign ranking in a short period of time. With so many halos surrounding Zhuowen, the Cheongsam lady was naturally incomparably cautious. Her heart even surged with a trace of peculiarity in her beautiful eyes. After all, the future of this young man in front of her was definitely limitless. If she could rely on such a monstrous genius, there would be many benefits for her. Junior, we meet again. The Cheongsam lady's voice was somewhat nervous. Her tender fists were clenched tightly as her pair of beautiful eyes stared intently at Zhuowen. Yes. This time, I will have to trouble Senior again. Please help me open a private room on the 10th floor of the cultivation tower for half a year. I need to cultivate there for a period of time. The corner of Zhuowen's mouth slightly raised as he said with a faint smile. Looking at Zhuowen's casual expression, a trace of sadness flashed across the Cheongsam lady's beautiful eyes. However, she seemed to have thought of something and said with some shock, Junior, you intend to open a private room on the 10th floor for half a year? That would require 216,000 contribution points. Zhuowen nodded and said, yes. I do intend to stay on the 10th floor for half a year. Looking at the expression on Zhuowen's face, the Cheongsam lady knew that the former was serious. Her jade-like hand lightly tapped on the counter and a screen popped out. After opening a private room on the 10th floor for half a year, she took out a jade key and handed it to Zhuowen. After receiving the jade key, Zhuowen paid the corresponding contribution points. After bidding farewell to the Cheongsam lady, he walked towards the 10th floor of the cultivation tower. Looking at the back of the figure disappearing on the stairs, the Cheongsam lady's beautiful eyes were somewhat gloomy. A trace of a bitter smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. She was very clear about the gap between her and Zhuowen. She was afraid that she did not even have the qualifications to rely on the latter. Junior Zhuowen is getting stronger and stronger. It's only been a little over a month, and is already able to earn so many contribution points, the Cheongsam woman muttered in a low voice, her beautiful eyes filled with envy. Arriving at the living room of the 10th floor, Zhuowen saw many figures sitting in the living room. Obviously, they were also cultivators who had come to freeload on the ice and fire energy. Zhuowen even saw many familiar faces. These familiar faces were the cultivators who had been sitting here when he first entered the 10th floor. It's Zhuowen. Low cries rang out. Many people who were close to Zhuowen quietly distanced themselves from him. A month ago, the fate of the 3 Ling brothers and Liu Xiong was unforgettable. This Zhuowen was simply a fiend. Whoever provoked him would be unlucky. Feeling the fear in the eyes of the other cultivators in the room, the corner of Zhuowen's mouth slightly curled. He did not pay too much attention to them. He took out a jade key and walked towards the corresponding private room's stone door. He opened the stone door and walked in. Half a year. Zhuowen needed to use this half a year to make a big breakthrough in his strength. It would be best if he could raise it to the heavenly sovereign realm. The energy in the cultivation tower is rich. Cultivating here is at least 10 times faster than the outside world. Zhuowen slowly walked to the praying mat in the middle of the private room and sat down. He took a deep breath and inhaled the rich energy in the surroundings into his chest. A trace of pleasure flashed across his eyes. Kid, what are your plans for the next half a year? Inside the cultivation room, Xiao Hei appeared in front of Zhuowen without any scruples. She crossed her paws and asked in an indifferent tone. I'll raise my strength first. Also, the techniques I have are too heterogeneous. I plan to integrate some of them. Zhuowen said with a smile. You're right. Your techniques are indeed too heterogeneous. Although they're quite powerful, you're unable to unleash their full potential. If you can integrate all these techniques, you'll definitely be able to unleash an extremely powerful force. Xiao Hei nodded. Let the little fellow out first. This cultivation room contains ice and fire energy. The ice energy within will be of great help to the little fellow's strength. Zhuowen waved his right hand and the profound soul ice butterfly immediately appeared in front of him. Soon after, it intimately rubbed itself against Zhuowen's chest, its eyes filled with dependence. Zhuowen patted the little fellow's head and instructed it. The little fellow reluctantly flew to the side of the cultivation room where the ice energy was rich. It began to absorb the rich ice energy in the cultivation room and began to cultivate by itself. A trace of satisfaction appeared in Zhuowen's eyes as he watched the profound soul ice butterfly quietly absorbing the ice energy. The profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation was currently at the peak of the Xuanzuan realm. It should be able to make a breakthrough soon. If the profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation could reach the golden sovereign level, it would be of great help to the current Zhuowen. However, all of this required the profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation to make a breakthrough. After withdrawing his gaze, Zhuowen flicked his finger and took out the slaughtering oath-breaking blade from his spirit ring. His eyes flickered as he said, "This slaughtering oath-breaking blade contains an extremely powerful slaughtering chi. It faintly matches the aura of my Azura blood spear. Perhaps I can combine the two together. The Tao of slaughter is different and leads to the same destination. If you can combine the two together, relying on the might of a high-grade emperor weapon like the slaughtering oath-breaking blade, you'll be able to control the power of the world. It will definitely be much more powerful than your Azura blood spear. However, you're an expert with a spear. If you switch to using a blade now, you might not be able to get used to it at first." Xiao Hei nodded in agreement. All the weapons in the world lead to the same destination. As long as I can control the power of the world, I'll be able to switch between spear and blade aura at will. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly as he said. In fact, Zhuowen had long realized that his methods were too heterogeneous. If he could combine them, he would definitely have the power to transform. However, he didn't have much time before. Now that he had calmed down, Zhuowen could study these things properly. "You brat, you're quite creative." Xiao Hei opened her mouth but found that she had no words to refute Zhuowen's words. She could only say this in embarrassment. "Let's try it first. After all, This is just my idea. Whether it will work or not, we'll only know after we put it into practice." Zhuowen shook his head and sat cross-legged on the praying mat. As he guided the surrounding ice and fire energy into his body to refine his meridians, he silently comprehended the slaughter origin within the slaughter abstinence violation blade. At the same time, Zhuowen also began to silently circulate the Azura blood spear aura within his body in an attempt to combine the two. Time was like a wild horse that had escaped its reins. A month passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Zhuowen was sitting cross-legged on the praying mat. Blood surged out from his body, making him look extremely terrifying and ferocious. Whoosh! Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes. Suddenly, a blood-red thread faintly appeared in his eyes. This blood-red thread ran from the corner of his eyes to the end of his eyes, like a bloody slit. It looked extremely strange. Slaughter. Aura. With a soft chant, Zhuowen suddenly took a step forward. Waves of blood-red aura surged out and filled the entire cultivation room. For a moment, it was as if a monstrous sea of blood had filled the entire cultivation room. Xiao He looked at Zhuowen's bloodshot eyes with interest and chuckled. "Is this another kind of aura of the heavens and earth that you've comprehended by combining the Azura blood spear aura and the slaughter origin?" Whoosh! Zhuowen nodded slightly. Immediately, the terrifying slaughter aura around him vanished. Zhuowen also recovered his calmness and said, "Yes. However, the slaughter aura that I've comprehended is still not perfect. I still need to practice it properly. Moreover, this slaughter aura is very compatible with the demonic slaughter Dao. When I use this slaughter aura in my demonic state, its power will increase by many times. The demonic slaughter Dao is different, but it leads to the same destination. You have many techniques that are related to slaughter. You can combine them and fuse them into a more powerful technique. The power of your slaughter aura is not bad. It's much stronger than the Azura blood spear aura." Xiao He nodded and praised. "After you've completely comprehended the slaughter origin, you can study Buddhism and raise the power of Buddhism to the extreme. At that time, you'll be able to comprehend the power of the demonic Buddha. I'm afraid that at that time, your strength will increase by hundreds or thousands." Hearing this, Zhuowen chuckled and joked, "Xiao He, when will your dragon soul materialization be able to display its powerful effects?" Xiao He was startled and immediately said, "Don't worry. This dragon lord's strength will not disappoint you. After you've truly advanced to the Emperor realm, the complete dragon soul materialization will have powerful dragon skills. At that time, you'll know the true strength of a dragon soul." Dragon skills? Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of contemplation. He was rather looking forward to the so-called dragon skills. After all, Xiao He's body was not simple. If he could display the power of the dragon skills, it would be terrifying. "You can continue to cultivate. There are still 5 months left in the cultivation room. There's still some knowledge about origin arrays. If you want to enter the arcane tower, you must master the necessary arcane knowledge. Otherwise, it's useless even if you have powerful mental strength." Xiao He instructed and did not speak anymore. Instead, he silently landed on the soul ice butterfly in the corner and sat on it, absorbing the ice and fire energy in the cultivation room. After all, the cultivation room was sealed with the more powerful ice-fire holy symbol's origin. There was always a trace of the holy symbol's origin aura in the ice and fire energy. This kind of origin aura was of great help to Xiao He. Chapter 1066. Someone from the inner yard cultivation knew no time, and half a year passed very quickly. Within the cultivation room, besides occasionally cultivating his origin energy, Zhuowen spent the rest of his time comprehending the slaughter force and studying arcane origin formations. After more than half a year, Zhuowen's slaughter momentum had become more and more perfect, and its power was also extraordinary. Just by releasing the slaughter momentum, its power was no weaker than Zhuowen's strength when he was in the first layer of bedevilment. Moreover, if Zhuowen used the massacre momentum in the bedevilment state, its power would increase by several times. This was because the massacre momentum was compatible with the massacre demon path. When the two were combined, its power would naturally become more and more terrifying. As for the origin array, Zhuowen had completely surpassed Little White's level. Although Zhuowen had studied the basics of origin array in Rattan Armor City, he could only refine a third-grade origin array at most. If other arcanists knew that Zhuowen could only refine a third-grade origin array with his mind power at the perfect fifth-grade origin array, they would definitely mock him. In the past half a year, Zhuowen's understanding of the fourth-grade origin array had deepened a lot. After all, his mind power had reached the perfect fifth-grade origin array. Many things were easy to understand, but it was still difficult to refine a fifth-grade origin array now. However, Zhuowen believed that if he was given another 2 months, with his powerful mind power, he should be able to perfectly comprehend the refining method of the fifth-grade origin array. Half a year has passed so quickly. It's a pity that I haven't broken through to the heavenly venerate level. I've only reached the peak of the golden venerate level, Zhuowen muttered to himself as he slowly got up. He originally thought that after cultivating in the cultivation tower for half a year, he should be able to smoothly break through to the celestial master realm. However, it seemed that he was still a little short. Whoosh! At this moment, the dark soul ice butterfly opened its eyes and landed obediently beside Zhuowen. It circled around Zhuowen intimately like a lively child. Xiao Hei, who was lying lazily on the dark soul ice butterfly, laughed and said, "You have gained a lot in the past half a year. The massacre momentum has been completely integrated into your bones. Your strength is probably much more terrifying than before. If you meet Liu Xiong again, you should be able to defeat her in one move." The corner of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly. He said, "There are still many things that can be developed in the force of massacre, such as the demonic Tao of massacre, the power of the blood demon, and so on. They can all be fused into the force of massacre and become even more terrifying. Yes, there's a lot of room for improvement in your slaughter momentum. If you study it properly, its power will definitely increase slowly. However, it's already strong enough. With your cultivation at the peak of the Golden Venerable Realm, your combat strength is comparable to a peak Celestial Master. If you use the Massacre Oathbreaking Blade, your strength will increase by a lot. Although you may not be a match for the Celestial Master monster in the outer court, the difference won't be too great." Xiao Hei said logically. The Massacre Oathbreaking Blade is a high-grade Emperor weapon. It is better not to use it casually. It will easily attract the attention of others. It is more suitable to use royal-level spiritual treasures in the future. Zhuowen muttered to himself. "You are right. You have a lot of contribution points. When the time comes, you can use your task points to exchange for a spiritual treasure. When the time comes, even if you don't use the Massacre Oathbreaking Blade, the power of the Massacre Oathbreaking Blade technique won't be too weak." Xiao Hei agreed. "Let's leave the cultivation tower first. At the same time, I plan to participate in the Arcana test and enter the Arcana tower. I must meet the owner of the Arcana tower, Mu Feng." With that, Zhuowen pushed open the stone door and walked out of the private room. Why is there no one in the living room? After walking out of the private room, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the living room on the 10th floor, which was usually packed with people, was now deserted. This strange phenomenon immediately attracted Zhuowen's attention. Although he was puzzled in his heart, he did not pay too much attention to it and directly walked down from the 10th floor of the cultivation tower. At this moment, there were very few people in the living room on the first floor of the cultivation tower. Other than the staff at the counter, there were only a few people. After walking to the counter where the Cheongsam lady was, Zhuowen returned the jade key to the private room to her and casually asked, "Senior sister, why are there so few people in the cultivation tower today? It is not like this normally." After the Cheongsam lady kept the jade key, she looked at Zhuowen with some astonishment. Soon after, she remembered that Zhuowen had just come out of the cultivation room. Her eyes revealed a look of relief as she softly said, "Junior brother, you may not know, but it seems that someone from the inner court came today." "Oh, someone from the inner court came?" Zhuowen's pupils shrunk slightly as a ripple rose in his heart. He continued to ask, "Senior sister, do you know why someone from the inner court came?" The Cheongsam lady shook her head and said, "I am not sure about this. After all, this news has just spread in the academy. Many students in the academy have gathered there one after another in order to catch a glimpse of the person from the inner court. As for what exactly is going on, there is currently no news. However, people from the inner court rarely come to the outer court. Since they have come, there must be something important. Unfortunately, I have work to do and it is not convenient for me to go out now. Junior brother, if you have the opportunity, you can go out and ask around. Zhuowen nodded his head. He was somewhat curious in his heart. He did not know why someone from the inner court suddenly came to the outer court. Let's first go to the task points to exchange for a blade-type soul treasure. With a trace of curiosity in his heart, Zhuowen ultimately decided to go to the task points to exchange for a blade-type soul treasure. After passing through a few corridors and passageways, Zhuowen quickly arrived at the task point. At the same time, the usually bustling task point was also deserted at this moment. There were only a few people there. It seemed that the attraction of someone from the inner court was extremely great to the outer court students. There was not a single person at the second level of the task point. At the counter, Bei Xian was leaning against the armchair with his eyes slightly squinted. He seemed to be enjoying himself. Senior Bei Xian. Zhuowen called out softly. Bei Xian, who was lying on the armchair, opened his sleepy eyes. When he saw that it was Zhuowen, a warm smile immediately appeared on his face. Don't you know what day it is today? Why did you come to the task point to look for me instead of going out? Bei Xian stood up and walked to the counter. He looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Senior Bei Xian, are you talking about someone from the inner court? Zhuowen asked. So you know. Aren't you curious about the people from the inner court? Bei Xian joked. Zhuowen shook his head and said, aren't the people from the inner court also cultivators? They are just cultivators who are stronger than us. What's so interesting about them? However, I'm curious about why someone from the inner court suddenly came. I don't know what his motive is. It shouldn't be just for a stroll in the outer court, right? Bei Xian shook his head and said, of course not. At this point, Bei Xian's voice suddenly became low. He stretched his head out and whispered to Zhuowen, it is said that the strongest branch in the inner court, Sky Capital Peak, wants to recruit a registered disciple. To an outer court disciple, this is a matter of reaching the heavens in a single bound. Sky Capital Peak. Registered disciple? Zhuowen was stunned. His eyes were filled with doubt. It seems like you don't know anything. Bei Xian was a little depressed when he saw Zhuowen's reaction. To tell you the truth, there are a total of 9 peaks in the inner court. The owner of each peak is a sage-to-be. The strongest peak among the 9 peaks is Sky Capital Peak. No matter if it's the power or the strength of the peak owner, they are superior to the other 8 peak owners. It has the most influence in the inner court. At this point, Bei Xian stopped talking and stared at Zhuowen. It was as if he wanted to see a different expression on Zhuowen's face. Zhuowen was stunned. His eyes revealed a trace of surprise. He didn't expect the inner court to have 9 peaks. Moreover, the owner of each peak was a sage-to-be. A sage-to-be was a powerful existence who was half a step into the saint realm. Their strength was far more terrifying than a 9th heaven emperor. A sage-to-be was enough to crush the combined attack of dozens of 9th heaven emperor. This showed how terrifying a sage-to-be was. Is there a saint in the inner court? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Bei Xian nodded and said, the real owner of the inner court is the dean of the inner court. He is a sage-to-be. However, that old man is very elusive. In the inner court, other than the peak owners of the 9 peaks, no one else has seen the dean of the inner court. There really is a saint, Zhuowen muttered softly. His eyes were filled with boundless radiance. Are you interested in the person who came from the inner court now? Bei Xian suddenly laughed. Zhuowen spread his hands and said casually, I am indeed interested. This time, Sky Capital Peak is recruiting registered disciples. Will they bring the registered disciples back to the inner court? Since he has become a registered disciple of Sky Capital Peak, he is naturally qualified to enter the inner court with the people from Sky Capital Peak. However, a registered disciple is the lowest existence. If he wants to become an official disciple of the inner court, His cultivation must at least reach the first Heaven Emperor realm. Bei Xian laughed. He can enter the inner court. Zhuowen's eyes lit up and he was slightly excited. This was a rare opportunity to enter the inner court. Zhuowen did not want to let it go. However, it is not so easy to be selected as a registered disciple. If you are not strong enough, you will not be selected. Bei Xian laughed again. I know. In this world, every opportunity requires sufficient strength to fight for it. Zhuowen clenched his fists and said seriously, "It is good that you have such awareness. With your talent, it is inevitable that you will enter the inner court. However, you can also try to become a registered disciple. Even if you do not pass, it is fine. After all, you are still young. You will have another chance in the future." Bei Xian laughed. Soon after, he shook his sleeve and a jade slip flew into Zhuowen's palm. Zhuowen revealed a trace of doubt as he looked at the jade strip in his palm. However, Bei Xian's subsequent message made him feel relieved. Chapter 1067. 7 kills blade. Looking at the jade strip in his hand, Zhuowen clenched his right fist. His eyes were filled with gratitude as he cupped his hands at Bei Xian and said, "Thank you, Senior Bei Xian. You're welcome. You've been helping me with my business every time, and the price is getting higher each time. Speaking of which, I've received quite a lot of benefits from you. This information is just a small matter to me." Bei Xian waved his hand and continued, "You must be here to exchange for something, right? Tell me about it, and I'll help you choose." After keeping the jade strip, Zhuowen nodded and said, "Senior Bei Xian, I need a blade-type spiritual treasure. It's best if it's one with a strong evil aura." Zhuowen's massacre oath-breaking blade technique and massacre momentum both contained evil aura. Hence, if he wanted to unleash its power, he naturally had to choose a blade-type spiritual treasure with a strong evil aura. A blade-type spiritual treasure with a strong evil aura? Let me take a look. Bei Xian nodded and tapped on the counter with his right hand. Instantly, a light screen popped up. His right hand tapped on the light screen repeatedly as he searched for a spiritual treasure that matched Zhuowen's requirements. "I've got it." Bei Xian's eyes lit up. With a pull of his right hand, a square light screen appeared in front of Zhuowen. On the light screen was a pitch-black long blade. The surface of the long blade was engraved with profound and complicated runes, and a mysterious aura was emitted from the blade. This blade is called 7 Kills. It's a superior emperor spiritual treasure. It has a terrifying killing power and has killed many people in the past. It's a weapon with a strong evil aura. However, the 7 Kills has a strong evil aura. If you're not careful, you'll be devoured by it. Do you really want to exchange for this 7 Kills? Bei Xian asked with a frown. Zhuowen nodded and said, "I'll take it. If that's the case, then take it. However, this 7 Kills is a relatively powerful emperor spiritual treasure. Hence, the price will be a lot more expensive. Around 200,000 contribution points." Bei Xian waved his sleeve and a long black blade appeared in his hand. He then tossed it to Zhuowen. After receiving 7 Kills, Zhuowen immediately felt a terrifying evil aura surge out from the hilt of 7 Kills and enter Zhuowen's body. "You dare to be arrogant with just this little bit of hostility?" Zhuowen shouted coldly. Suddenly, a terrifying slaughter qi gushed out from his body. It was as if countless mountains of corpses and seas of blood appeared behind Zhuowen's back. It was as if the Azura hell had appeared. That terrifying slaughter qi immediately forced the 7 Kill blade out of Zhuowen's body. Wang. The 7 Kills blade wailed as its body trembled. It no longer dared to release the slightest bit of hostility. It was as if it was afraid of the slaughter qi that was gushing out from Zhuowen's body. Bei Xian looked at Zhuowen in astonishment. When Zhuowen released the slaughter qi, a trace of bloodlust rose in his heart. Furthermore, it was out of his expectations that Zhuowen could subdue the 7 Kills blade so easily. Zhuo Xiaoyu is indeed not simple. The slaughter qi on your body is faintly contained within the heavens and earth. I'm afraid it's a powerful slaughter qi. No wonder you need a spiritual treasure that is filled with hostility. Bei Xian nodded and thought to himself. There was no need to talk about Zhuowen's talent. Bei Xian had always seen it. In his heart, he was certain that Zhuowen would be extraordinary in the future. The only thing he lacked now was time. Senior Bei Xian, I'll take my leave first. Zhuowen chatted with Bei Xian for a while. After gaining a deeper understanding of the people from the inner academy, he bid farewell to Bei Xian and left the mission location. After walking out of the mission location, Zhuowen began to ponder about the people from the inner academy as he walked along the quiet and winding path. The inner academy's sky capital peak would definitely not recruit many registered disciples. On the other hand, there were many geniuses in the outer academy. Furthermore, Zhuowen had only joined the outer academy for a short period of time. He would definitely be at a disadvantage in this competition. After pondering for a moment, Zhuowen took out the jade strip that Bei Xian had given him. The jade strip recorded all the information about the 32 people on the outer academy's Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. Zhuowen planned to study it carefully. After all, he was currently at a disadvantage. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy would you be able to win 100 battles. Zhuowen's mind was like a needle as it entered the jade scroll. Zhuowen quietly looked at the contents within. After around 10 breaths of time, Zhuowen's mind separated from the jade scroll. He had roughly browsed through the contents of the jade scroll, but his eyes revealed a trace of seriousness. That was because the geniuses on the Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard were not simple. Even the weakest of them was at the intermediate Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. Furthermore, those geniuses who were able to enter the Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard were all geniuses whose strength far exceeded their cultivation realm. Even if they were at the intermediate Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard, their battle strength was comparable to a late Heavenly Sovereign or even a peak Heavenly Sovereign. On the Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard, Zhuowen also saw the third Pavilion Master of the Emperor Pavilion, Liu Qing. Liu Qing was ranked 30th, and his strength was also at the intermediate Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. He was very strong. Moreover, Zhuowen also saw many familiar faces on the leaderboard. Among them, there was Cheng Dong, who was ranked 27th, Hu Jiao, who was ranked 28th, and Qi Ji, who was ranked 25th. These three people were in charge of the Outer Academy's new disciple recruitment. Zhuowen remembered them very clearly. Zhuowen's focus was on the top 5 Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard. The top 5 geniuses were basically at the peak Heavenly Sovereign leaderboard, and they all had their own powerful trump cards. The person ranked 5th was the second Pavilion Master of the Emperor Pavilion, Di Shi. He was the younger brother of the Great Pavilion Master of the Emperor Pavilion, Diba. These two brothers single-handedly supported the Emperor Pavilion, which had a great reputation. Their reputations in the Outer Academy were also not weak. Ranked 4th was one of the 4 great powers of the Outer Academy, the Pavilion Master of the Clear Sound Pavilion, Qing Yin. Ranked 3rd was the Pavilion Master of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion, Moyan Wushang. Moyan Wushang? So she's the Great Pavilion Master of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion. Looking at the records of Moyan Wushang in the Jade Slip, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of understanding. When he was facing Liu Xiong, Cheng Dong had appeared many times. Among them, the Great Pavilion Master behind the Fragrant Ink Pavilion had added fuel to the fire. At that time, Zhuowen was already puzzled. He was not related to the Pavilion Master of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion, so why would he help him so much? It turned out that the Pavilion Master of the Fragrant Ink Pavilion was an old acquaintance of Zhuowen, Moyan Wushang. However, Zhuowen had been in the Outer Academy for so long, but Moyan Wushang had not come to see him even once. Zhuowen guessed that Moyan Wushang might not be able to face him. After all, during the battle with Emperor Qing, she was taken away by Mang Shi midway, leaving only Zhuowen, Lu Hantian, and Elder Shi Yuan to fend for themselves. Perhaps she was also afraid that Zhuowen would hold a grudge against her, which would make things awkward when they met. Of course, Zhuowen did not think that he was such a narrow-minded person. Moreover, Moyan Wushang did not leave voluntarily. He was forcefully taken away by Mang Shi. This matter could not be blamed on Moyan Wushang. Thinking of Moyan Wushang, Zhuowen shook his head and did not insist. He knew that when the time came, he would definitely meet Moyan Wushang again. He was not in a hurry. As for the second place on the heavenly sovereign list, it was the great pavilion master of the Emperor Pavilion, Diba. His cultivation was also at the peak of the heavenly sovereign realm. It was said that Diba had great means. He had once escaped from the pursuit of a first-level Emperor realm warrior. He was a very terrifying genius. As for the first place on the heavenly sovereign list, it was the pavilion master of the Haoyu Pavilion, Xiaoyu. He was an existence with half a foot in the Emperor realm. His combat strength already possessed the power of the Emperor realm. He had once killed a first-level Emperor realm warrior and fought a second-level Emperor realm warrior. This Xiaoyu is so terrifying. He actually killed a first-level Emperor realm warrior? When Zhuowen looked at the information of Xiaoyu, Zhuowen was really shocked. Although he had killed great emperors before, including Supreme Jin, who was a third-level great emperor, he had not done it with his own strength. He had relied on the exterminating oath-breaking blade and the blood-robed monk's divine thought to achieve that level. Moreover, he could only use it once. With Zhuowen's current combat strength, at most, he could kill a peak heavenly sovereign expert. If he were to fight a first-level Emperor realm expert, he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand it. The gap between him and Xiaoyu was not small. The outer court is indeed full of hidden talents. There are so many monstrous geniuses. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with a grave expression as he kept the jade strip. The top 5 geniuses on the heavenly sovereign ranking all possessed fighting strength that could threaten him. Moreover, the top 10 geniuses on the heavenly sovereign ranking were difficult to deal with. Hence, the pride in Zhuowen's heart gradually dissipated. As he passed by a square, Zhuowen's attention was suddenly attracted by a clamor. He turned his head and saw that the center of the square was already filled with people. It was a sea of people and it looked extremely terrifying. Although the crowd was terrifying, these people consciously made a path in the middle as if they were making way for others. The senior brothers and senior sisters of the inner court sky capital peak are so strong. All of them are Emperor realm cultivators. Some of them are not more than 30 years old. They are so young to reach the Emperor realm. Their talents are terrifying. What kind of existence is the inner court? To become a disciple of the inner court, one must at least reach the first-level Emperor realm. The disciples who come from the inner court are naturally powerful and talented. Zhuowen's ears twitched and he heard the discussion of some students not far away. He knew that the reason for the commotion in the square was because of the so-called inner court disciples. Let's take a look. With a thought, Zhuowen lifted his feet and walked towards the center of the square. Soon, he came to an inconspicuous corner of the crowd and his gaze gathered on the path in the middle of the crowd. There were 7 figures walking slowly in the path. The one in front was a gray-robed elder with a strong aura. His aura was vast and it was not inferior to that of the outer court dean. Obviously, the gray-robed elder was also a middle-level Emperor realm expert. The 6 people following behind the gray-robed elder were 4 men and 2 women. All 6 of them had their chins slightly raised and their eyes were filled with pride. The 6 of them enjoyed the respectful and envious gazes that were directed at them from the surroundings. Compared to the inner court, the so-called geniuses of the outer court were not even worth mentioning in their eyes. The weakest among the 6 of them was a first-level Emperor realm expert. This kind of cultivation was enough to crush all the geniuses of the outer court. Looks like the inner court is really amazing. It can cultivate such young Emperor realm experts. No wonder so many outer court disciples want to enter the inner court. Chapter 1068. Arcane Tower. A group of 7 people slowly walked through the path that was separated by the crowd. At the end of the square, the upper echelons of the Outer Academy, led by the Outer Academy headmaster, were already standing there, preparing to welcome these 7 people. After the 7 people arrived in front of the Outer Academy headmaster, they exchanged some greetings. Then, they gradually disappeared at the end of the square under the envious gazes of many people. Clearly, the Outer Academy headmaster and these people from the Inner Academy intended to discuss some important matters. I have long heard that the inner academy would come to the outer academy to select some geniuses to join the inner academy as in-name disciples. Originally, I thought that this was just a rumor. It is unexpected that it is actually true. Since there is such a rumor, it is definitely not baseless. Although the inner academy only recruits in-name disciples with the lowest status in the inner academy, being able to enter the inner academy to train is something that many outer academy disciples yearn for. That's right. It is said that the inner academy has specialized high-rank DI experts as lecturers. He can help you solve your cultivation problems and save us a lot of trouble. Therefore, almost 70% of the in-name disciples who enter the inner academy will successfully advance to DI power and become official disciples of the inner academy. Discussions continuously sounded from the surroundings. Their voices were filled with envy and yearning. The disciples who joined the outer academy had heard of the famous inner academy and had yearned for it for a long time. Zhuowen, who was standing in the crowd, narrowed his eyes slightly. It seemed that Bei Xian was right. These 7 people from the inner academy might really be here to recruit in-name disciples. However, he did not know when these people from the inner academy would announce the recruitment of in-name disciples. After all, from the discussions of the surrounding people, he could tell that the recruitment of in-name disciples was not so simple. Enter the inner academy in advance. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of hope as he clenched his hands together. This was because there was another person waiting for him there. That beautiful figure, which he could not let go of for a long time, constantly lingered in his mind. Therefore, Zhuowen must obtain this opportunity. However, he also knew that he must obtain the 1,000-layered stone before entering the inner academy. After which, he must use the 1,000-layered stone to merge the 9 types of earth flames into a heavenly flame. Only then would he be able to expel the cold qi in Mu Chunshue's body after meeting her. Next, I need to find an opportunity to enter the Arcana Tower. Once I'm able to meet Mu Feng, things will be much easier. Zhuowen raised his head slightly as he spoke. His deep eyes landed on the arcane tower nearby, which was covered in countless runes, as a trace of determination flowed out of his eyes. Let's go to the Arcana Tower and ask about how to join the Arcana Tower. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he walked towards the Arcana Tower. He had been in the outer courtyard for 2 months, but he still hadn't entered the Arcana Tower. The structure of the Arcane Tower was similar to that of the Cultivation Tower. There was also a rather large plaza in front of the tower, but this plaza was much quieter than the one in front of the Cultivation Tower. Moreover, most of the people walking around the plaza were arcanists wearing long robes. Zhuowen's arrival caused quite a few arcanists to be surprised, but they didn't say anything. Even though this place was within the boundaries of the Arcana Tower was a part of the outer courtyard in the first place. On the surface, they didn't prohibit other students from entering. Zhuowen saw quite a few arcanists setting up stalls in the large plaza. The stalls were selling yuan crystals, low-level yuan arrays, as well as some materials needed to refine yuan arrays. There were even some secret spirit techniques. There was a dazzling array of items, and there was a great variety of them. Zhuowen casually swept his gaze over these stalls, clearly lacking in interest. This was because the yuan arrays on the stalls weren't very high level. Most of them were grade 3 yuan arrays, with the occasional grade 4 yuan array. As for grade 5 yuan arrays, there wasn't a single one. The Greater Infinity Sword array in Zhuowen's possession was a grade 5 yuan array, so he was naturally not interested in any yuan arrays below grade 5. However, he also knew that grade 5 yuan arrays were usually life-saving treasures for arcanists. Even if they had one on them, they wouldn't put it on display for sale. However, Zhuowen did see quite a few decent yuan array materials at some of the stalls. Hey! Ice silver flower? Zhuowen let out a soft cry of surprise and immediately stopped in front of a stall. The owner of this stall was a young man around 23 years old. He wore a long yellow robe, and there were 3 vertical lines on the chest of his robe, indicating that he was a grade 3 arcanist. Brother, are you interested in buying this ice silver flower? The yellow-robed young man's eyes lit up when he saw Zhuowen stop in front of his stall, and he immediately smiled with some joy. However, What puzzled him was that Zhuowen was wearing the outer courtyard uniform and not in the attire of an arcanist. So why had this person come to the plaza of the Arcana Tower? How much is this ice silver flower? Zhuowen nodded. In the past half a year, he had been studying yuan arrays. From his initial superficial understanding to now, he had become somewhat proficient. Originally, he could only refine grade 3 yuan arrays, but now, he was completely familiar with grade 4 yuan arrays. He could even barely refine grade 5 yuan arrays. Last time, Zhuowen had tried to refine a grade 5 yuan array, the Ice Profound array, and had failed many times. However, he had also learned a lot from his experience. Later on, he discovered that the yuan array lacked a plant like the ice silver flower, which was extremely cold and yin. However, he was still in the cultivation room at that time, so he didn't exchange for it with task points. When he came out, he had basically forgotten about this matter. Now that he had come to the plaza of the Arcana Tower and suddenly saw the ice silver flower, he remembered that he had failed to refine the Ice Profound array, which was why he had such an intense reaction and stopped. Seeing that Zhuowen had the intention to buy it, the yellow-robed young man's eyes flashed and he said quite enthusiastically, "This ice silver flower grows on the peak of the Longhan Mountain in the extreme north of Excellent Spirit Island. It is a very rare medicinal herb." The yellow-robed youth was very enthusiastic in his speech. He was full of praises for the silver ice flower. It was as if this flower was something that only existed in the heavens and could only be found in the mortal world. However, Zhuowen silently watched the yellow-robed youth's boastful speech. Eventually, the yellow-robed youth couldn't continue his speech. "How about this? I won't give a random price. 1,000 contribution points. This price isn't considered expensive, right?" Finally, the yellow-robed young man asked tentatively. "It's indeed not expensive. I want all 10 ice silver flowers in your stall." Zhuowen nodded. With a stroke of his right hand, he put the 10 ice silver flowers in the yellow-robed young man's stall into his spirit ring. Then, he put 10,000 contribution points into the yellow-robed young man's contribution counter. "You actually want all of them?" The yellow-robed young man was stunned at first. Then, he saw the 10,000 contribution points that had suddenly appeared on the counter on his wrist. A look of excitement immediately appeared on his face. His stall's business wasn't very good. He would be very satisfied if he could earn 500 or 600 contribution points a day, but now, because of Zhuowen, he had earned 10,000 contribution points all of a sudden. Even after deducting the cost, he still made about half of the profit. The yellow-robed young man was naturally overjoyed. No matter how he looked at Zhuowen, he had a good impression of him. After buying the ice silver flowers, Zhuowen didn't leave. Instead, he said to the yellow-robed young man in a low voice, "Brother, my name is Zhuowen. I would like to ask, how can I successfully join the Arcana Tower?" Because of Zhuowen, his income had increased explosively today. The yellow-robed young man naturally didn't hide anything from Zhuowen. "So it's little brother Zhuo. You can call me Huang Can. From the looks of it, little brother Zhuo shouldn't be an arcanist of our Arcana Tower yet. Since you plan on joining our Arcana Tower, then you should also have a talent for spiritual energy, right?" Huang Can smiled rather warmly. Zhuowen nodded and smiled. "I do have some talent for spiritual energy. That's why I've come to the Arcana Tower to ask about it. I hope you can enlighten me." Huang Can chuckled and then said in a low voice, "The Arcana Tower has 7 floors. Each floor represents a Grade 1 Arcanist. The first floor is where Grade 1 Arcanists are active, the second floor is for Grade 2 Arcanists, and the 7th floor is where the Master of the Arcana Tower, Master Mu Feng, lives. It's said that many of Master Mu Feng's creations are displayed there, and there are even Grade 7 origin arrays among them. As for if you want to join the Arcana Tower, it's actually quite simple. You just have to enter the first floor and undergo the corresponding spiritual energy test and the creation of the origin arrays. As long as the examiner thinks you pass, then you can successfully become a member of the Arcana Tower." Hearing this, Zhuowen understood what Huang Can meant. It seemed that joining the Arcana Tower wasn't as difficult as he had thought. As long as he passed the test, he could become a member of the Arcana Tower. Also, The robes of the arcanists in the Arcana Tower are divided into different grades. From low to high, they are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple. Because I'm a grade 3 arcanist, I'm wearing a yellow robe. In the entire Arcana Tower, the only person who can wear a purple robe is Master Mu Feng. Huang Can's eyes were filled with admiration when he spoke of Mu Feng. After all, Mu Feng was the great person who had founded the Arcana Tower. Moreover, he was an important figure in the entire outer courtyard. Even the headmaster of the outer courtyard treated Mu Feng with respect. It was clear just how high Mu Feng's status in the outer courtyard was. Brother Zhua, I see that this is your first time in the Arcana Tower. Let me show you around the Arcana Tower and take you to the test. If you pass, then you can successfully join the Arcana Tower. At that time, we'll be fellow disciples of the same sect. Huang Can acted as if he was very familiar with the place. With a wave of his sleeve, he stored all the items on the stall into his spirit ring. Then, he led Zhuowen towards the Arcana Tower. Zhuowen was startled, but he didn't say anything. He only silently followed behind Huang Can. After all, this was his first time in the Arcana Tower. He really did need someone to show him around the Arcana Tower. After entering the Arcana Tower, Zhuowen discovered that the space inside the Arcana Tower was actually much larger than the Cultivation Tower. However, from the outside, the Arcana Tower and the Cultivation Tower were actually the same size. Why was the space inside so large? Chapter 1069. Arcana Tower Test. So that's how it is. Zhuowen's eyes flashed slightly, but his heart was somewhat moved. This Mu Feng was indeed a heavenly Arcana master. The number of Yuan formations he could set up was truly numerous. Not only was the Yuan Qi gathering Yuan formation in the main city set up by him, he even knew the space expansion Yuan formation of the Arcana Tower. He was truly knowledgeable. There was a ring-shaped counter at the center of the first level of the Arcana Tower. A red-robed youth was lazily sprawled on the counter. His eyes were drooping, as if he would fall asleep at any moment. Huang Can led Zhuowen to the front of this red-robed youth and gently knocked on the glass counter below. The originally drowsy red-robed young man was immediately woken up by this knock. His eyes revealed a furious expression. Just as he was about to curse out loud, he saw the yellow robe on Huang Can's body. The vulgarities that he originally wanted to spit out were forcefully swallowed back down his throat. The red robe meant that this youth was a grade 1 Arcana master, while Huang Can was a grade 3 Arcana master. He did not dare to yell at such an existence. So it's senior brother Huang Can. May I know why senior brother Huang Can has come this time? The red-robed youth had a fawning smile on his face as he spoke. The warm smile on Huang Can's face had already disappeared and was replaced by a dignified expression. He was a grade 3 Arcana master, so he naturally had to display the appropriate demeanor in front of this red-robed youth. Zhuowen looked at Huang Can's change somewhat strangely. However, he did not say anything and only quietly observed. Huang Can would probably tell him about the test. This is my friend. He wants to join our Arcana Tower, so I brought him here to test him. Huang Can cleared his throat and said, "So it's senior brother Huang Can's friend. That's easy. I also have a red robe here. This friend can directly wear it and become a member of our Arcana Tower." The red-robed youth's face became even more flattering as he actually took out another red robe from his spirit ring. There's no need to test him. Zhuowen was startled, unable to react in time. There's no need. Since his senior brother Huang Can's friend, I have to take care of him. The red-robed youth hurriedly said with a smile. Huang Can coughed dryly and said softly to Zhuowen, "Brother Zhua, since this is junior brother's kindness, then accept it. After all, the test has a certain failure rate." Hearing this, Zhuowen finally understood the intentions of Huang Can and the red-robed youth. It turned out that the two of them felt that Zhuowen's spiritual talent wasn't very high and thought that he would fail the foundation test, so they planned to let him in through the back door. With regards to the actions of Huang Can and the red-robed young man, Zhuowen did not know whether to laugh or cry in his heart. However, since there was no need for a test, Zhuowen had saved himself some trouble. He nodded his head and received the red robe. Seeing Zhuowen take off the red robe, Huang Can revealed a brilliant smile on his face. He smiled at Zhuowen and said, "Brother Zhuo, train well on the first level in the future. Once your spiritual energy has increased, you can try to enter the second level." Zhuowen nodded his head and said seriously, "Brother Huang, you mean to say that if I want to enter the higher levels of the Arcana Tower, I can only take the test one level after another?" Huang Can said without hesitation, "Of course. This is a rule set by Master Mu Feng. He hopes that the Arcana Masters of our Arcana Tower can be down to earth and train step by step. We must not be greedy. So that's how it is." Zhuowen softly muttered. Soon after, he continued, "Then let's continue towards the second level." After explaining, Huang Can originally planned to bring Zhuowen out of the first level. However, Zhuowen's sudden words caused his footsteps to stagger, and he nearly fell to the ground in a somewhat unstable manner. Soon after, Huang Can turned his head and said somewhat awkwardly, "Brother Zhuo, you want to obtain the qualifications to become a Grade 2 Arcana Master? There's really nothing I can do about it." Zhuowen, however, smiled and said, "Don't worry. I'm only going up to take the test this time. I won't make things difficult for you. If I fail, I naturally won't pester you endlessly." Huang Can sighed softly when he heard this. What he was most afraid of was that Zhuowen would ask him to open a back door for the second level. The first level was one thing. A Grade 1 Arcana Master was the lowest level of existence in the first place. Having one more Arcana Master wouldn't make any difference, and opening a back door would be quite easy. However, the test for a Grade 2 Arcana Master was not so lax. There would be several people supervising the test, so there was no chance of cheating. "All right then, I'll take you to the second level." As he spoke, Huang Can led Zhuowen up the stairs to the second level. The second level was similar to the first level. There was also a ring-shaped counter in the center, but there were 3 people at the counter, all of them Grade 2 Arcana Masters. "The 3 of you. This friend of mine is here to take the test for a Grade 2 Arcana Master. I hope that the 3 of you can make an exception for him." Huang Can clasped his hands towards the 3 Arcana Masters at the counter. Huang Can's status as a Grade 3 Arcana Master was still somewhat useful, and the 3 people at the counter treated him rather courteously. However, what needed to be tested still needed to be tested. They couldn't just throw the orange robe at Zhuowen like they had on the first level. "Brother Zhuo, this test," Huang Can said somewhat helplessly. "Don't worry, I'm naturally able to handle this test." Zhuowen softly chuckled as he walked to the front of the counter. A lady from the trio took out a round transparent ball and placed it in front of Zhuowen as she said, "This is used to test your mental energy. If your mental energy has reached Grade 2, it will light up." Huang Can frowned a little. This Zhuowen originally didn't belong to the Arcana Tower's sphere of influence. He should be one of the outer courtyard's martial arts students, so he didn't think that Zhuowen's spiritual power could reach the second level. After all, most of a cultivator's time was spent raising their cultivation. How could they spend so much time and energy raising their spiritual power? Even if their spiritual power talent was good, they would still favor one over another. Zhuowen calmly placed his right hand on the round ball. Then, an extremely dazzling light suddenly surged out from the transparent ball. The moment the light swept out, Zhuowen quickly withdrew his right hand and said to the 3 people at the counter, "This should be enough, right?" "It's enough. Congratulations on obtaining the orange robe." The 3 people looked at each other and withdrew the round transparent ball. The woman took out the orange robe and handed it to Zhuowen. His spiritual power really reached the second level. Huang Can was a little stunned, a trace of astonishment in his eyes. "Brother Zhuo, I really didn't expect your spiritual power to reach the second level. Looks like you've also studied your spiritual power while cultivating." Huang Can came to Zhuowen's side and laughed. Zhuowen nodded. After changing into the orange robe, he walked towards the third level. When he saw Zhuowen's actions, the smile on Huang Can's face froze. Why was this Zhuowen heading towards the third level? Could it be that he wanted to take the test to become a third-level Arcana Master? It can't be. Brother Zhuo's spiritual power is on par with mine. Huang Can came back to his senses and muttered in a low voice as he followed behind Zhuowen. The test on the third level was a little complicated. Other than checking whether one's spiritual power had reached the third level, the person in charge of the test actually took out a broken third-level yuan array and asked Zhuowen to repair it. His spiritual power has actually reached the third level. This brother Zhuo, when Huang Can saw the transparent ball in Zhuowen's hand, which was used to test rank 3 mental energy, shining brightly, he did not know how to describe his current feelings. This is the third-level yuan array, the 8 extreme array. However, it is a damaged product. The materials to repair this array are all here. If you can repair it within 2 hours, you will receive the yellow robe. The third-level tester said to Zhuowen as he threw out a yuan array and a pile of materials. It's actually the 8 extreme array. This yuan array is quite difficult to repair among the third-level yuan arrays. If I were to repair it, I would need around an hour. I wonder how long Brother Zhuo will take. Huang Can softly muttered as he watched from the side. His gaze was fixed on Zhuowen. Although he was a little surprised that Zhuowen's spiritual power had reached the third level, he knew that refining a yuan array required a certain amount of time and practice. After all, Zhuowen was a martial cultivator. It was unlikely that he had a lot of time to practice refining yuan arrays. Therefore, Huang Can felt that it was unlikely that Zhuowen could completely repair the 8 extreme array in 2 hours. Zhuowen, who was standing in front of the counter, nodded slightly. Soon after, he stomped his foot and summoned a green flame. This was one of the earth fires in Zhuowen's body. It was called the 3000 green lotus flames. Earth fire. Huang Can's pupils shrank as he exclaimed in surprise. Earth fire was a rare existence for most Arcana masters. At the very least, among all the Arcana masters in the Arcana Tower, those who possessed earth fire were definitely in the minority. Even Huang Can's body did not possess such a powerful flame. The Arcana master in charge of the test was also shocked. Clearly, his thoughts about Zhuowen possessing a flame like the earth fire were similar to Huang Can's. Zhuowen's right hand controlled the 3000 green lotus flames while his left hand controlled the flow of materials in and out. Everything seemed very natural and smooth. After about 5 minutes, Zhuowen slowly withdrew the 3000 green lotus flames into his body. Soon after, he handed the 8 extreme array to the tester and said, "It's done. You can take a look to see if there are any mistakes." So fast. The tester looked at Zhuowen suspiciously. Soon after, his gaze landed on the 8 extreme array. At this moment, Huang Can also came over and asked Zhuowen in confusion, "Brother Zhuo, it's only been 5 minutes and you've already finished repairing it. Don't you think you're cutting corners? You'll know once you see the results." Zhuowen said indifferently, "Perfect. You actually managed to repair the 8 extreme array to such a perfect state. This is your yellow robe. Take it." The tester's excited voice rang out. Huang Can's suspicious expression immediately froze. His gaze was numb as he looked at the 8 extreme array in the tester's hands and Zhuowen, who was leisurely taking the yellow robe. He felt as if his worldview had been turned upside down. He could accept that Zhuowen's mental strength had reached the 3rd grade and that he possessed earth fire. However, it only took him 5 minutes to repair the 8 extreme array. Was this still a feat that a 3rd grade Arcana master could achieve? Chapter 1070. Luo Xiong. After putting on the yellow robes, Zhuowen smiled at Huang Can and said, "Brother Huang, can you accompany me to the 4th level?" Huang Can, who was still suffering from a severe blow, immediately felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly stabbed by a knife when he heard these words. Soon after, he stared at Zhuowen with dead fish eyes and said, "Brother Zhuowen, do you mean that your mental energy has already reached grade 4? Won't you find out after the test?" Zhuowen chuckled as he replied. On the other hand, Huang Can's face twitched. He had really misjudged Zhuowen. He didn't expect that a random customer would be such a powerful existence. Zhuowen's mental strength could actually reach level 4. Moreover, Zhuowen seemed to be a few years younger than him. Huang Can was just about to reply when an ambiguous voice suddenly sounded, causing Huang Can's eyes to darken as he fell silent. "Oh, isn't this Huang Can? Why did you enter the Arcana Tower instead of obediently setting up your stall outside? How long can you train in the Arcana Tower with that poor appearance of yours?" Zhuowen frowned slightly. His footsteps, which had originally been heading towards the 4th level, paused slightly. He turned his head and saw 2 figures walking over from the entrance of the 3rd level. The 2 figures were a man and a woman. The man was slightly older than Huang Can and had an ordinary appearance. However, he was wearing a long green robe and was actually a grade 4 Arcana Master. Beside the man was a pretty girl in a long yellow robe. This girl was around the same age as Huang Can, around 23 years old. She was above average in terms of looks and had a curvaceous figure. Her figure was extremely hot and eye-catching. Huang Can's gaze shifted slightly. It first landed on the girl as a trace of sorrow appeared in his eyes. Soon after, he stared intently at the man and said, "Chen Gang, my matters have nothing to do with you, right?" The green-robed man named Chen Gang laughed mischievously. His right hand that was wrapped around the woman beside him was extremely mischievous. He pinched the woman's ample bosom, causing the woman to let out a delicate moan. However, she didn't struggle free. Instead, she continued to snuggle up to Chen Gang. Her gaze didn't even look in Huang Can's direction. Seeing this scene, Huang Can's expression became extremely gloomy. The sorrow in his eyes became even more intense. His hands were tightly clenched. Zhuowen even noticed that Huang Can's palms were covered in sweat that was shining with white light. From the expression on Huang Can's face, as well as the actions of Chen Gang and the yellow-robed lady, Zhuowen could roughly guess what was going on. However, he did not open his mouth. Instead, he quietly observed everything. Hee. Indeed, it's unrelated, but I just don't like you, that's all. By the way, are you still not allowed to do that? Right, Shixiang? Chen Gang said in a sarcastic tone. He shifted his gaze to the woman in his arms and asked in a deliberately loud voice. The yellow-robed lady named Luo Xiong glanced indifferently at Huang Can. Soon after, she smiled at Chen Gang and said, "He's just a piece of trash. Why bother? Let's go to the 4th floor. This piece of trash is annoying." Huang Can's face was as pale as snow. He took a few steps back and said in a deep voice, "Luo Xiong, why do you have to be so ruthless? Everyone knows how I, Huang Can, treated you back then. Why do you want to leave me and give yourself to this Chen Gang?" Luo Xiong stared indifferently at Zhuowen and said, "You're still so naive, even stupid. In this martial world, the weak are prey to the strong. Your strength isn't enough to give me what I want. Why should I be with you?" Chen Gang also laughed complacently and said, "Huang Can, you're too weak. What future can a grade 3 Arcana Master have? Can you give Luo Xiong a grade 4 Yuan array? Can you bring her to the 4th floor of the Arcane Tower to cultivate? Since you can't give her anything, why should Luo Xiong stay with a piece of trash like you? Brother Gang, let's go. This person is too annoying. Let's not stay on the 3rd floor." Luo Xiong said to Chen Gang with a charming smile. Chen Gang laughed and said, "You're right. We don't need to pay too much attention to this piece of trash. Let's go." After saying that, Chen Gang and Luo Xiong walked to the 4th floor hand in hand. However, when the two were about to step on the stairs to the 4th floor, Zhuowen suddenly opened his mouth. "Brother Huang isn't the piece of trash you say. You're a few years older than Brother Huang, but you're only at the initial grade 4. Brother Huang is already at the perfect grade 3. It's only a matter of time before he catches up to you. Are you qualified to call Brother Huang a piece of trash?" When these words came out, Chen Gang and Luo Xiong's footsteps suddenly stiffened. Then, their gazes shifted slightly and stared at Zhuowen. Chen Gang said coldly, "Who are you?" "A mere grade 3 Arcana Master. Are you going to speak for a piece of trash like Chen Gang? Don't you know your place?" "Brother Zhuo, let's forget about it. There's no need to get into a conflict with Chen Gang. His background in the Arcana Tower is not low. It's better not to provoke him." Huang Can came to Zhuowen's side and advised in a low voice. "It seems that Huang Can didn't tell you my identity, but it's fine. I won't argue with a piece of trash like you. A mere grade 3 arcana master dares to talk back to me. Now, kneel down and kowtow to me a few times and I won't pursue your mistake. Chen Gang turned around and faced Zhuowen indifferently. Huang Can, just look at yourself. What kind of friends have you made? A mere rank 3 arcana dares to be so arrogant. It really is a case of people behaving like friends. Nuo Xiong, who was standing beside Chen Gang, finally spoke up, her voice sharp and ear-piercing. Huang Can's face was gloomy, but he did not refute. Luo Xiong used to be the woman he loved deeply. Unfortunately, she had now become like this. In order to obtain better resources, she had resolutely abandoned him and thrown herself into Chen Gang's arms. At this moment, his heart was like dead ashes. He was in no mood to refute. Zhuowen also felt Huang Can's sorrowful mood. He said indifferently, "Brother Huang, why are you so depressed? Why do you have to be so depressed? With your talent, it won't be difficult for you to become a rank 4 arcana master. Once you're strong enough, no one will be able to bully you. At that time, some people will regret their choices." Huang Can lifted his head when he heard these words. There was a lost expression in his eyes. Soon after, he saw the ridicule in Luo Xiong's and Chen Gang's eyes. Both of his fists were tightly clenched. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. The woman he loved had left him and thrown herself into someone else's arms. Now, he was even being bullied by that person. He, Huang Can, was very unwilling. What you need to do now is not to be depressed and muddle through. What you need to do is to work hard and advance bravely. Only a true powerhouse can obtain what they want. Only then can they teach those who oppress them a lesson. If you continue to be depressed, your life will be over. Zhuowen continued to remind him. As for Chen Gang's words, he did not pay any attention to them. In fact, he directly ignored them. Huang Can's eyes brightened. The bewilderment within them gradually faded and was replaced by a deep glint. Zhuowen was right. If he became depressed because of this matter, he would only be ridiculed even more by Chen Gang. Chen Gang's gaze became increasingly gloomy. He felt humiliated by Zhuowen's disregard. He took a step forward and coldly said to Zhuowen, "What kind of attitude is this? From the looks of it, you don't plan on kowtowing to me at all? Chen Gang, don't tell me you plan on fighting in the Arcana Tower. Master Mu Feng has strictly ordered that fighting is not allowed in the Arcana Tower. Are you going to violate that?" Huang Can hurriedly stepped out from behind Zhuowen when he saw Chen Gang's unfriendly expression. "You two don't know what's good for you. If you have the guts, stay in the Arcana Tower. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Chen Gang seemed to have thought of something. A trace of hesitation appeared on his face. He retracted his foot and brought Luo Xiong up to the 4th floor. "Brother Huang, let's go up as well," Zhuowen said to Huang Can and directly stepped onto the stairs to the 4th floor. Huang Can's expression was slightly stunned. He knew that Zhuowen was determined to enter the 4th floor to take the test. He nodded and followed behind him. The 4th floor was much larger than the first 3 floors. There were a few green-robed arcana masters coming and going in the large hall. Zhuowen and Huang Can, the 2 yellow-robed arcana masters, attracted quite a bit of attention when they entered the 4th floor. "You two are grade 3 arcana masters. Why did you enter the 4th floor for no reason?" A tall green-robed youth slowly walked in front of Zhuowen and Huang Can and asked indifferently, "Isn't that woman also a grade 3 arcana master? Why didn't you stop her and instead came to stop the two of us?" Zhuowen pointed at Luo Xiong, who was nestled in Chen Gang's arms, and said indifferently. The tall youth glanced at Chen Gang and Luo Xiong and said expressionlessly, "A green-robed arcana master is qualified to bring another arcana master to the 4th floor. The two of you are yellow-robed arcana masters and have no one to lead you. What qualifications do you have? 2 fellows who are asking to be humiliated. Mere yellow-robed arcana masters dare to enter the 4th floor. Do they really think they are grade 4 arcana masters? What a joke." Chen Gang also noticed Zhuowen and Huang Can, who had been stopped, and loudly mocked them. Chen Gang's mocking words also attracted the attention of the other arcana masters in the hall. Everyone's eyes gathered on Zhuowen and Huang Can, their eyes full of ridicule. "The two of you, please go back," the tall and sturdy young man said indifferently. "I didn't enter the 4th floor for no reason. I intend to take the Grade 4 Arcana Master test. Are you going to stop me?" Zhuowen suddenly said. Grade 4 Arcana Master test? If so, go to that counter. If you don't pass the test, leave the 4th floor as soon as possible. We don't welcome yellow-robed Arcana Masters here." The tall youth nodded and pointed at the ring-shaped counter in the center of the hall. Zhuowen nodded and walked straight to the ring-shaped counter, while Huang Can silently followed behind. "How laughable. You actually want to take the Grade 4 Arcana Master test. It has been a long time since a yellow-robed Arcana Master became a green-robed Arcana Master. You coming in to take the test is just asking to be humiliated." Chen Gang snorted coldly. The surrounding green-robed Arcana Masters also looked at Zhuowen and Huang Can with interest. Chen Gang was right. It had been a long time since a new member joined the 4th floor. They wondered if the youth in front of them could successfully obtain a green robe. Chapter 1071. Difficult. Seated at the counter was a green-robed elder. He had also noticed Zhuowen's arrival. His eyes were filled with indifference as he asked, "Are you here to take the Grade 4 mental energy test?" Zhuowen nodded. The elder did not say anything else as he directly took out a black palm-sized cube from his sleeve. "Crush it and you will have the qualifications to be green robe." After the green-robed elder finished speaking, he once again bent over the table as if nothing had happened. He completely ignored Zhuowen. Clearly, he did not believe that Zhuowen could successfully pass the test. 4 yuan crystal block. I did not expect that old man Lu Li would take out such a thing as a Grade 4 mental energy test item. Isn't this a little too harsh? When they saw the black cube that the green-robed elder handed over to Zhuowen, the gazes of many people in the hall hardened as a strange expression appeared on their faces. "It's actually a 4 yuan crystal block. Elder, isn't this test a little too difficult? If you want to crush this 4 yuan crystal block, you will need at least an advanced Grade 4 mental energy. Even an initial Grade 4 mental energy might not be able to crush it." Huang Can's face was a little pale as he hurriedly spoke to the green-robed elder in front of the counter. However, he was interrupted by the latter. "If you don't want to take the test, you can leave. Since this old man says that this is the test, then it is the test. If you are not satisfied, you can forget about taking the test and scram back to the 3rd floor." The green-robed elder once again lifted his head and spoke in an extremely rude manner. "That's right. If you don't have the ability, then don't take the test. Elder Lu Li is very busy. You are just wasting his time by being so fussy." Chen Gang and Nuo Xiong came to the front of the counter as they looked at Zhuowen and Huang Can with mocking eyes. "Chen Gang, do you need me to open a private room for you? Your brother had already notified me before he entered the 5th floor. Moreover, he had already paid the contribution points. You only need to take a key." The originally cold and indifferent elder Lu Li immediately revealed a smile when he saw Chen Gang. "My brother is so considerate. Thank you." Senior Lu Li. Chen Gang smiled politely as he received the jade key from Lu Li. However, he did not enter the private room at the depths of the 4th level. Instead, he looked at Zhuowen with a mocking gaze. He wanted to see how this arrogant Zhuowen would embarrass himself. Looking at this scene, Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of understanding. It seemed that the green-robed old man's deliberately making things difficult for him was related to Chen Gang. The green-robed elder also understood Chen Gang's meaning. His indifferent gaze once again landed on Zhuowen's body as he said, "Why? Aren't you going to start the test? If you can't break this 4 yuan crystal block, you can immediately roll out of the 4th floor." "You two really don't know what you're talking about. You don't have the ability, yet you insist on puffing yourself up at your own cost and coming to the 4th level to take the test. You really are like 2 clowns." The corners of Chen Gang's mouth curled up into a sneer. Nuo Xiong, who was beside Chen Gang, stared coldly at Huang Can and said, "Huang Can, do you really think that you haven't lost enough face? You actually followed me to the 4th floor. Let me tell you clearly, my man is Chen Gang. Is it fun for you to pester me like this?" Nuo Xiong's words caused Huang Can's pupils to shrink. There was a trace of anger in his eyes. He did not follow Nuo Xiong here, but purely to accompany Zhuowen to take the test. Now in Nuo Xiong's eyes, he was pestering her. Pestering her? Did I say that I came to the 4th floor because of you? Please don't be so self-righteous, okay? Since we are no longer related, what does it have to do with you where I go? Huang Can replied coldly. Nuo Xiong's pretty face froze. She did not expect that Huang Can, who was originally very good-tempered, would actually dare to speak to her like this. However, she could not refute. She really had no relationship with Huang Can now. You really don't mean what you say. Anyway, I don't want to see you, but you just have to walk in front of me. Don't you feel annoyed? Nuo Xiong snorted coldly. I just came here to accompany my friend to take the test. It has nothing to do with you. Since you feel annoyed, you don't have to pay attention to me at all. Huang Can replied coldly. He had thoroughly seen the nature of Nuo Xiong, so his previous good impression of her had already disappeared at this moment. Now, there was even a trace of disgust. Looking at Huang Can's indifferent attitude, Nuo Xiong sneered again and again. She was sure that Huang Can was trying to cover up. Your friend. This trash actually dares to take the test to become a 4th-grade arcanist. He is really asking for humiliation. Nuo Xiong's beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen, who was not far away. The corner of her mouth had already revealed a very thick sneer. Catcher. Suddenly, a crisp breaking sound resounded in the entire hall of the 4th floor. Immediately, Zhuowen's right hand slowly opened. The crystal block that was originally held in his hand was now broken into black powder. Just now, when Huang Can, Chen Gang and Nuo Xiong were talking, Zhuowen had already silently mobilized the mental strength in his body to destroy the structure of the crystal block. This crystal block was extremely tough on the outside, but the inner part was quite fragile. However, if you want to enter the crystal block, your mental strength must be at least at the advanced level of the 4th grade. So before, there were people in the hall who said that the 4th grade mental strength test was extremely harsh. After all, generally, the mental strength of the arcanists who took the 4th grade arcanist test was basically at the advanced level of the 3rd grade and the initial level of the 4th grade. As for the advanced level of the 4th grade, they had already become a green robe. How could they still be a yellow robe on the 3rd floor? The breaking sound, in the entire hall, was so sweet and crisp. Immediately, the rest of the people in the hall were stunned. Their eyes were all fixed on the black powder in Zhuowen's palm. This kid, unexpectedly, quietly crushed the crystal block, which meant that this kid's mental strength was at least at the advanced level of the 4th grade. Chen Gang and Nuo Xiong's faces stiffened as they stared at the black powder in Zhuowen's palm. Even the green-robed old man's face stiffened as he stared at the black powder. The crystal block has been broken, so I passed the test, right? Zhuowen put the black powder in front of the counter and said calmly. The green-robed old man came back to his senses, and his pale eyebrows slightly wrinkled. He waved his right hand, and the black powder in front of the counter flew into his hand. He looked at it carefully, as if he was judging whether Zhuowen had really crushed the 4-yuan crystal. Senior Lu Li. I'm afraid this kid must have used some unknown method to cheat and broke the crystal block. Chen Gang was the first to react and suddenly said to the green-robed elder. After carefully looking at the black powder in his hand, the green-robed elder nodded and said with a dignified face, Chen Gang is right. There is indeed something wrong with the powder of the crystal block. What method did you use to break it? Senior Lu Li. Is it really okay for you to slander me like this? Brother Zhuo broke the crystal block in front of you. If he really cheated, didn't you discover it before? After he broke it, you said he cheated. Huang Can said with some indignation. The green-robed elder's face suddenly became cold. His right hand slammed on the surface of the table and said indifferently, How dare you talk to me like this? I'm obviously telling the truth. How dare you say that I'm slandering you? Isn't it? Brother Zhuo passed the test in front of you. If he really cheated, you should have mentioned it before. Now that the 4 yuan crystal block is broken, you say that he cheated. You don't even give a reason. Isn't that just slandering others? Huang Can said indignantly. I think you're courting death. The green-robed elder was a little angry. He waved his sleeve and suddenly, a terrifying mental strength came crushing down, turning into a huge mental strength palm and grabbed at Huang Can. Boom. However, just as the psychic energy palm was about to touch Huang Can, another psychic energy barrier suddenly rose up and blocked the psychic energy palm. You dare to fight in the arcane tower? The green-robed elder's eyes turned and stared at Zhuowen as he said coldly. Zhuowen laughed and said, You were the one who attacked first, weren't you? Now you're accusing me of fighting in the arcane tower. Don't you think it's funny? Who am I? Who are you people? One of you cheated wantonly, and the other offended his superiors. It's natural for me to teach you a lesson. You rashly resisted and violated the rules of the arcane tower, the green-robed elder said coldly. You mean to say that we have to stand here and let you beat us? Zhuowen raised his eyebrows, and his voice gradually turned cold. Of course, the green-robed elder said matter-of-factly. What a laughable statement. Zhuowen smiled coldly. A wave of mental strength gradually spread out from his Niwen palace and circled around his body, forming a faintly discernible and invisible force. Senior Hedgerow. Not only did this person cheat, but he also tried to resist. This kind of insolent little bastard who doesn't know the rules should be taken down immediately. If it's not convenient for Senior to do it, let me do it, Chen Gang, who had been standing to the side, volunteered. You're right. It's time to teach these arrogant fellows a lesson and teach them a lesson. However, the arcane tower cannot kill, so don't be too harsh. Just cripple these two. The green-robed elder nodded lightly. I know the rules. Senior Hedgerow, don't worry. Chen Gang cracked a smile and slowly walked towards Zhuowen, his eyes full of mockery. The other arcanists in the hall only stood to the side, not intending to participate in this matter. They could only sigh inwardly at Zhuowen's bad luck. Chen Gang's status in the arcane tower was extraordinary. This was because Chen Gang's elder brother, Chen Xin, was a genius on the 5th floor of the arcane tower. Moreover, he had a good relationship with the 4th floor tester, Hedgerow. Thus, anyone who offended Chen Gang would often find it difficult to move an inch in the arcane tower. If you had kowtowed to me and admitted your mistakes just now, there wouldn't be so much trouble right now. Unfortunately, it was you who didn't know when to back down. Thus, I will teach you a rather memorable lesson so that you know how to behave in the future. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.